Chapter 1233. His voice was not loud, but it carried the authority of a superior. When the first prince and the second princess heard that, their hearts, which were on the verge of despair, suddenly lit up. Their gloomy faces also seemed to be glowing with vitality and radiance again. It's young Master Qin Qingxiao. Their bodies trembled, and they were excited. This feeling of coming back from the jaws of death made them feel like they had risen from hell to heaven in an instant. Dugu Qiuma's eyes revealed a strange look, but his expression was still calm. He was not in a hurry to kill the first prince and the second princess now. This was because he wanted to see their despair after their hope was shattered again. Outside the valley, there was also an uproar. All the prodigies looked over. Qin Qingxiao's green robe fluttered, and he looked like a dragon or a phoenix. He was standing on a sharp sword that was emitting green light. It was a divine weapon that was born with him. It was called the Qingxiao sword. It could cut through gold and jade, and cut through iron like mud. It was always successful. Qin Qingxiao's name also came from this sword. At this moment, Qin Qingxiao was standing on the flying sword. He was like an ancient sword immortal, and he had an extraordinary temperament. However, his expression was very cold at this moment, and his gaze fell on the valley. Looking at the bloody corpses on the ground, Qin Qingxiao frowned. He was not feeling pity for his dead followers, but he was a little angry that Dugu Qiuma dared to kill his followers. When the first prince and the second princess saw this, they hurriedly knelt on the ground and cried, "Young Master Qin Qingxiao, our plan has been completely ruined by Dugu Qiuma. Our people have also been killed. Young Master, please kill this bastard." All their hopes were now placed on Qin Qingxiao. They hoped that Qin Qingxiao could kill Dugu Qiuma. Qin Qingxiao's eyes dimmed, and his gaze fell on Dugu Qiuma. If it were another dynasty's prodigy, Qin Qingxiao would have killed him with a sword without saying a word. However, Dugu Qiuma was different. He had reached the 92nd level of the martial steel, and his sacred lotus had 49 leaves. His talent was on par with Di Haotian's. Setting aside his background, in terms of aptitude and strength, Dugu Qiuma was already on par with the prodigies of the overlord forces. In fact, he might even be better. Therefore, Qin Qingxiao did not attack immediately. Instead, he said with a cold face, "Dugu Qiuma, you and I have no grievances in the past. Shouldn't you give me an explanation?" Hearing Qin Qingxiao's words, Dugu Qiuma didn't say anything. The eldest prince and the second princess were stunned. What was going on? Shouldn't Qin Qingxiao directly kill Dugu and Qiuemo? The sky prides outside the valley were in a heated discussion. However, they finally understood the situation. Qin Qingxiao must have been a little afraid of Dugu. Otherwise, his attitude wouldn't be like this. No grievances in the past, no enmity in the present. Dugu Qiuma only sneered. Qin Qingxiao did not have a grudge against him, but Yi Guqin did. Having a grudge against Yi Guqin was equivalent to having a grudge against him. "I, Dugu Qiuma, don't need to explain my actions to you." Dugu Qiuma's words were cold, arrogant, domineering, and insufferably arrogant. An awe-inspiring murderous aura spread out along with his words, shocking everyone present. Dugu Qiuma was the first person who dared to speak to an overlord-level force, a sky pride on the Dragon Phoenix list, like this. Even Qin Qingxiao himself was taken aback. Then his face turned ashen, and the aura of the 6th level of the divine dwelling realm burst out. "Dugu Qiuma, you really don't want face. Do you think you can be so arrogant just because you performed well in the sacred lotus of the martial tablet? The test doesn't completely represent your true strength." Qin Qingxiao's eyes were filled with murderous intent, and true qi flowed around his body. As a sky pride on the Dragon Phoenix list, he naturally had his own pride. At this moment, if he still didn't make a move, he would lose face as a sky pride on the Dragon Phoenix list. Kill. Qin Qingxiao didn't say anything else. He had nothing else to say. He used his strongest move right from the start. The Qingxiao sword under his feet soared into the sky as if it carried the power of the 9 heavens and the wind and clouds. It shot toward Dugu Qiuma. Great! Seeing Qin Qingxiao make a move, the first prince and the second princess were excited. At the same time, they looked at Dugu Qiuma with joy. "Dugu Qiuma, provoking us is the biggest mistake you made." They believed that with Qin Qingxiao making a move, They would definitely be able to kill Wuxia without any suspense. Yan Wushuang Jiling and the others' hearts were in their mouths. Although they were also a little wary of Wuxia, who was known as the god of slaughter. But in comparison, if they fell into the hands of Chen Qingxiao, the first prince and the others, their outcome would be even more tragic. Good. Wuxia wasn't afraid at all. He also wanted to use Chen Qingxiao as a whetstone to measure his true combat strength with the strength of a sky pride on the Dragon Phoenix list. Wuxia raised his hand, and a black light broke through the air. It was the God Devourer sword wrapped in black crystals. He held the God Devourer sword in his hand, and clashed with the green firmament sword. In an instant, the sound of metal clashing burst forth. It was like the sound of the heavenly realm's weapon refinement room. The ear-piercing sound waves shattered everyone's eardrums. The green firmament sword flew back, its body trembling slightly. Chen Qingxiao was slightly stunned. This green firmament sword was his companion divine weapon, and was extremely powerful. Even compared to a 10th tribulation divine weapon, it had an absolute advantage. Chen Qingxiao even believed that his companion divine weapon was comparable to a 100 tribulation divine weapon that could withstand more than 100 lightning tribulations. In the past battles, Chen Qingxiao had never been afraid of anyone when divine weapons clashed. But now, after clashing with the black crystal sword, Chen Qingxiao seemed to be able to hear the green firmament sword trembling in pain. How is this possible? Chen Qingxiao's face darkened. He was unwilling to believe it. How could a mere sky pride of a dynasty be qualified to own a 100 tribulation divine weapon? Vast sea sword technique. Chen Qingxiao roared, and displayed the Imperial Heavenly Sword Pavilion's Emperor-class martial arts. In an instant, the green firmament sword emitted a green glow. Rays of green sword light appeared like a green wave of sword chi. It floated in the void and swept toward Wuxia. Seeing this, Wuxia also released the aura of the third heaven of the Abhijna realm. But because he had a special unblemished Azura divine dwelling, in terms of the density of his chi, he was not much weaker than Chen Qingxiao, who was at the sixth heaven of the divine dwelling realm. Wuxia infused his Azura chi into the God Devourer sword, and directly displayed the Demon 13 swords. The first sword, Blood Kill, broke through the green wave of sword chi. The second sword, Death Shadow, split the sword chi. Then the third, fourth, and fifth swords were all unleashed. The entire green wave of sword chi was directly split into two in front of everyone's shocked eyes. He broke Chen Qingxiao's sword move so easily. Seeing this scene, everyone inside and outside the valley was shocked. The first prince and the second princess saw this scene, and their hearts skipped a beat. As they looked at each other, they vaguely saw a hint of uneasiness in each other's eyes. It shouldn't be. Child Chen is a sky pride on the Dragon Phoenix list. He might just be testing. The first prince laughed dryly. His back was already covered in cold sweat. They never thought that Chen Qingxiao would be defeated. Chapter 1234. Chen Qingxiao was a little surprised to see his sword move being countered so easily. His eyes gradually revealed a serious expression. Chen Qingxiao was indeed arrogant and a little arrogant. But that didn't mean he was a fool. The strength that Wuxia displayed was enough for Chen Qingxiao to treat him seriously. Wuxia's footsteps flashed, and there were threads of lightning twining around his feet. With every step he took, there seemed to be a thunderous explosion in the void. It was the first level of the divine movement secret skill, chasing lightning. In an instant, Wuxia's figure flashed and appeared in front of Chen Qingxiao, stabbing at his chest with his sword. So fast! Chen Qingxiao was shocked and hurriedly blocked with his sword. Clang! The ear-piercing sound of metal clashing formed a transparent sound wave that swept out in all directions. The entire valley seemed to reverberate with that ear-piercing sound. Boom! The two figures retreated at the same time, and Chen Qingxiao kept retreating. He felt a terrifying rebounding force hit him, causing his arms to go numb. His Qingxiao sword trembled as if it had suffered a huge injury. Wuxia is really strange. Chen Qingxiao's face was as cold as ice. Wuxia's strength was far beyond his expectations. Not to mention, he also had a strange divine weapon. Its quality was terrifyingly high. Even his companion divine weapon was somewhat unable to withstand its power. Duguqioma maintained a strong stance and summoned the battle god demon body. Endless demonic runes appeared on the surface of his body, making him look like a demon king from hell. The battle god demon body had a total of 9 transformations, and Duguqioma had now cultivated to the 3rd transformation. Although it was slightly inferior to Yi Guqin's ancient god technique, it was still an excellent body refining technique. At this moment, Duguqioma, who had unleashed his 3rd transformation battle god demon body, was even more wild and unrestrained like a demon king. His moves were grand. His left hand formed hand seals and unleashed devouring energy explosion, evil origin lightning and other moves. With the god devourer sword in his right hand, he used the 13 demon swords. The soul devouring clan's martial arts in his left hand, and the demon sword emperor's taboo heaven absolute art in his right. At this moment, Duguqioma was unbelievably powerful as he crushed Qin Qingxiao. Everyone at the scene was dumbfounded, intimidated by Duguqioma's powerful and domineering moves. Demon King, this is a true peerless Demon King. Outside the valley, some of the spectating sky prides exclaimed. This reminds me of the Devil Emperor ascending to the 9th heaven phenomenon that caused a small stir in the South Horizon region some time ago. Do you think it was caused by this Dugu begging the Devil Emperor? There were also some prodigies who suddenly recalled the Demon Emperor phenomenon from a while ago. When they looked at Dugu, who was like a demon god, they naturally connected the two together. That shouldn't be possible. Rumor has it that the phenomenon of the Devil Emperor descending to the 9 heavens was caused by the prodigy of the extermination devil sect. Although Duguqioma is strong, he is still a prodigy of a dynasty. Someone objected. As they argued, they continued to watch the battle. Inside the valley, violent battle waves burst forth. The surrounding rocks tumbled down, and were directly crushed into powder by the shock waves. Boom. After another exchange, Qin Qingxiao was forced to retreat. The blood in his chest churned, and an abnormal shade of red appeared on his face. Seeing that Qin Qingxiao seemed to be unable to deal with Duguqioma, the faces of the first prince and the second princess became paler. Duguqioma, you do have some skills, but I am a prodigy of the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion, an existence on the Dragon Phoenix list. Qin Qingxiao was unconvinced. He raised his sword, and in the void, sword seals appeared. Tiangang Sword Seal. The sword seals emitted a sharp metallic aura, suppressing Duguqioma. Duguqioma burst forth with Azura True Qi, and immediately performed a devouring technique, Black Dragon Devour. His True Qi transformed into a huge black dragon head, and directly swallowed all the sword seals. Then Duguqioma flashed and threw out an evil elemental puppet. Waves of black waves appeared in the void, and directly blasted toward Qin Qingxiao. Qin Qingxiao's green clothes were torn apart, but unexpectedly, there was a layer of green gold soft armor under his green clothes. The evil elemental puppet's waves bombarded the soft armor, causing it to burst with green light. All kinds of runes appeared, and the attack's power was reduced. Even so, Qin Qingxiao's chest felt stuffy, as if his chest had been hit by a hammer. So you're wearing a turtle shell? Duguqioma sneered. He could also see that the green and gold soft armor was quite extraordinary. It was also at the level of a Heavenly Tribulation divine weapon. Although weapon-type Heavenly Tribulation divine weapons were rare, they weren't too rare. However, armor-type Heavenly Tribulation divine weapons were very rare. From this, it could be seen that the prodigies of the overlords were a level higher than the prodigies of the dynasties in all aspects. However, if that was the case, Duguqioma still had nothing to fear. Damn it! Qin Qingxiao was extremely sullen at this moment. As a prodigy on the Dragon Phoenix roll, his greatest characteristic was his companion divine weapon, the Green Firmament Sword. However, the Green Firmament Sword was now completely suppressed by Duguqioma's God Devourer Sword. Qin Qingxiao only knew that Duguqioma's sword was extraordinary, but he didn't know that it was a primordial demon sword. Otherwise, even if he was given 100 guts, he wouldn't choose to fight. Duguqioma, I was just warming up before. This is the real battle. Qin Qingxiao's face turned pale as he looked at the playful eyes outside the valley. He once again used the core sword technique of the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion. A blazing brilliance appeared from the sword. Startling rainbow sword technique, dusk. This was another emperor-level sword technique that Chen Qingxiao used. Instantly, sword light filled the void, and the glow lingered as if dusk had descended. 13 demonic swords, star incineration. Duguqiu Mo countered by using the 13 demonic swords. After all, this sword technique was the ultimate technique of the demonic sword emperor, and its power was unpredictable. Duguqiu Mo had yet to fully unleash the power of this sword technique. Startling rainbow sword technique, eternal night. Chen Qingxiao's sword momentum changed again, and it was as if a curtain of night had descended. Together with the green firmament sword, it pressed down on Duguqiu Mo. Duguqiu Mo then used the moon slashing, eclipse, and other sword techniques of the 13 demonic swords to break through one after another. In the end, Chen Qingxiao's genuine qi gathered, and a bright rainbow light bloomed from the sword and soared into the sky. It was like a rainbow above the ninth heaven, dazzling and almost blinding people. Final sword technique, startling rainbow. As the sword fell, sword qi overflowed and rushed into the sky. It was as if a rainbow had descended from the sky. Before the might of the sword had even landed, a deep crack had already appeared in the ground below. Duguqiu Mo's white hair was messed up by the air pressure, but he didn't look afraid. He once again used the 6th sword technique of the 13 demonic swords. Tunqi. Azura true qi was injected into the God Devourer sword. Suddenly, a monstrous black sword qi burst out. Although Duguqiu Mo couldn't unleash 1% of the God Devourer sword's power, this little bit of power was enough to suppress the surroundings. Boom! Thousands of sword qi scattered, covering the surroundings. The first prince, the second princess, Yan Wushuang, Princess Fengxi, and the others hurriedly retreated to the edge of the valley for fear of being affected. The surrounding rocks were pierced through the air, and the mountains collapsed. With one collision, the entire valley was in a mess. As smoke and dust rose, everyone's gaze was cast over. What was the result of such an intense collision? Chapter 1235. The entire valley was filled with smoke. The clash between two geniuses was very intense and very eye-catching. They all wanted to know who was better. In the thick smoke, there was the sound of swords clashing and the sound of blood coughing. As the smoke dissipated, the fight between the two was seen by everyone. Duguqiu Mo's black robe was slightly torn, but he was still in good condition. His fighting god demonic body made his body extremely strong, so it was difficult for him to be seriously injured. On the other hand, Chen Qingxiao was bleeding from the corner of his mouth. However, with the protection of the azure gold soft armor, he was not seriously injured. However, anyone with discerning eyes could see that Chen Qingxiao did not have the upper hand in this clash. In fact, he was at a disadvantage. This is a genius ranked 14th on the Dragon Phoenix list. Even he cannot suppress Duguqiu Mo. He is even at a disadvantage. As expected of the white-haired sword demon, after the sacred imperial world, Duguqiu Mo's name will shock everyone. The spectating heavens favorites all gasped. Their eyes were filled with shock and awe. Duguqiu Mo's current strength was no weaker than the average genius on the Dragon Phoenix list. How could this be? The first prince and the second princess were both trembling. They had originally thought that Chen Qingxiao's arrival would suppress everything. A mere Duguqiu Mo would be easily suppressed. However, the result was completely different from what they had imagined. The two of them, who had been confident in Chen Qingxiao, were now worried. However, they could not escape because they felt Duguqiu Mo's murderous intent locked onto them. If they ran away, Duguqiu Mo would immediately kill them. Moreover, the first prince and the second princess had a feeling that if Duguqiu Mo wanted to kill them, even Chen Qingxiao would not be able to stop him. In the valley, Chen Qingxiao's eyes were as cold as frost. There was extreme seriousness in his eyes. He knew that he had encountered a tough opponent this time. Now, Chen Qingxiao would believe that Duguqiu Mo was a hidden prodigy of the demonic extermination sect. However, at this moment he was in a difficult position. Chen Qingxiao didn't want to engage in a bloody battle right here and reveal his trump card. It would be detrimental to his search for more opportunities in the Holy Imperial Universe. However, if he admitted defeat, it would greatly affect his reputation. Even the reputation of the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion would be greatly damaged. Thinking of this, Chen Qingxiao looked at Duguqiuma and said, Duguqiuma, we've already fought to this point. Do you still want to continue? If you continue to fight, it will be very disadvantageous for you. Chen Qingxiao was actually trying to find a way out for himself, so that his reputation would not be tarnished. However, the corners of Duguqiuma's mouth curled into a cold smile when he heard this. You're still thinking for the enemy during a great battle. Chen Qingxiao, you're really considerate. Anyone could hear the thick sarcasm in his words. Chen Qingxiao's expression was unnatural as he said, This is your last chance. Since you don't want to take it, then forget it. Cut the crap, let's fight. Duguqiuma didn't say anything else. It was impossible for Chen Qingxiao to end the battle just like that. Not to mention that he had once said that he would take Yi Guqin as his follower. If that was the case, then Duguqiuma might as well suppress him first. Boom. Blood-colored genuine qi burst out from Duguqiuma's body. His aura was like a rainbow as he swung his sword. At the same time, a purple aura emerged from his body and wrapped around the sword, making the sword move even more powerful. It was the Khanate Purple Qi. The Khanate Purple Qi's greatest use was in cultivation. It was known as a cultivation accelerator. However, that didn't mean that the Khanate Purple Qi could only be used for cultivation. It could also be used to fight enemies. The power of any move would be amplified after the Khanate Purple Qi was added to it. Duguqiuma swung his sword as if he wanted to cut open the sky. The Khanate Purple Qi wrapped around the Khanate Purple Qi, and wrapped around the God Devourer sword. The power of this move was unparalleled. Even Chen Qingxiao was shocked and quickly used his move to fight back. Cyclone Sword Cut. Chen Qingxiao controlled the green firmament sword and spun in the void. A green storm of sword qi spread out and connected heaven and earth. If anyone was caught in the storm, they would definitely be torn apart by the endless sword qi. When the two sword moves collided, sword qi burst out and split the sky and earth. Everything in the valley seemed to have been cut and shattered by the sword qi. Cracks spread on the ground. Duguqiuma's body shook. Sword qi brushed past his face and body, causing wounds. However, his expression was indifferent and he didn't feel any pain. Although his body had been baptized by the heart of the Azura Sage King and transformed into a body of flesh and blood, he still felt pain. However, he could still block out the pain. His sword broke through the green sword qi storm. Chen Qingxiao spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated. Even with the green firmament sword and the protection of the azure gold soft armor, he was still severely injured and his face was pale. Duguqiuma still had the upper hand in this attack. No, I don't believe it. Chen Qingxiao's eyes were bloodshot. He didn't have any scruples. He knew that if he didn't use his full strength, he might really lose. You're lucky enough to witness my trump card. Chen Qingxiao spat out a mouthful of blood essence and splashed it on the green firmament sword. In an instant, a misty green light appeared on the blade of the sword, and mysterious runes appeared one after another. Those were the natural sword moves recorded on the green firmament sword. When combined with the green firmament sword itself, it had endless power. Green firmament sword art, bright sunlight. Chen Qingxiao shouted and unleashed the true power of the green firmament sword. The green firmament sword art was the natural sword move recorded on the green firmament sword. Swoosh. With a swing of the sword, the green sword qi seemed to cut the sky and earth apart. Duguqiuma looked calm. He held the God Devourer sword with both hands and injected Azura vital qi into it. He used another move. 13 demonic swords, 7th sword art defying earth. Duguqiuma held the sword with both hands and turned the sword upside down, stabbing it into the ground. In an instant, the ground crumbled and endless sword qi burst out from the ground. That move shook the earth and the mountains. The ground of the entire valley seemed to have crumbled, as if there was an earthquake. Countless sword qi burst out from the ground. The 7th move of the 13 demonic swords used the sword qi to trigger the earth vital qi and unleash a huge destructive force. If the demonic sword emperor used this move, everything within a 10,000-mile radius would collapse and form a hole. Boom. A huge explosion and the sound of the ground collapsing spread out in all directions. Therefore, everyone was dumbfounded by what they saw. Such a powerful sword move made their scalps go numb and their minds tremble. Even Chen Qingxiao's natal sword art seemed a little dull in the face of such a move. Rumble. In the violent collision, Chen Qingxiao's azure soft armor shattered into countless metal shards and scattered in all directions. He was also hit by the sword chi from the ground and smashed into the stone wall of the valley. Spiderweb-like cracks appeared all around him. He was covered in blood and his bloodshot eyes stared at Duguqioma as if he couldn't believe his failure. No. I haven't lost yet. Chen Qingxiao roared and tried to use his natal sword art again. However, Duguqioma's soul-devouring demonic eyes were filled with a bloody light. Chapter 1236. In fact, Duguqioma had already made up his mind when they first started fighting. He wanted to suppress Chen Qingxiao and enslave him. The reason for this was that Chen Qingxiao had shamelessly said that he wanted to take Yi Guchen as his follower at the martial tablet St. Lotus. Since that was the case, Duguqioma would make Chen Qingxiao his follower. At this moment, Duguqioma activated the power of the soul-devouring demon eye. A terrifying soul power swept out and attacked Chen Qingxiao's mind. Chen Qingxiao was the pride of the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion and the Dragon Phoenix role. Naturally, there was a protective spiritual item in his mind to prevent him from being attacked by soul attacks. Therefore, it was not that easy for Duguqioma to enslave Chen Qingxiao with the soul-devouring demon seed. It would take some effort. Chen Qingxiao held his head with one hand and screamed in pain. He felt his mind tremble violently as if a soul spear had pierced into it. Inside his sea of consciousness, a green pearl was emitting a green light that enveloped his sea of consciousness and protected him. This green pearl was the spiritual item that protected his mind, the green spirit pearl. If not for the green spirit pearl, Duguqioma's soul-devouring demon, I would have injured Chen Qingxiao's mind in one hit. No. I'm the pride of the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion, and the Dragon Phoenix role. I can't lose. Chen Qingxiao's expression was ferocious. He forcefully gathered the true chi in his body and used his ultimate move again. Green Heaven Sword Art, Boundless Sky. Endless green sword chi burst out from the green firmament sword. At this point, Chen Qingxiao had used all his trump cards. He no longer held back and wanted to kill Duguqioma. However, it was still useless. Duguqioma held the soul-devouring demon sword in his hand. Pitch-black sword energy surged and collided with Chen Qingxiao's sword. Chen Qingxiao was already severely injured. After being hit again, he spat out blood. Green Heaven Sword Art's ultimate move, Nine Heavens Fury. Chen Qingxiao's blood-red eyes almost popped out of their sockets. The essence blood in his mouth splashed onto the green firmament sword. Streaks of green runes appeared, accompanied by a sword chi that wanted to pierce through the heavens, bursting forth. This was the final form of the green cloud sword art, Nine Heavens Fury. The sword slashed out horizontally, and it was as if the nine heavens were enraged. The wind and clouds surged, and the sword chi dispersed in all directions. Countless rocks and boulders were blasted into pieces, and the entire valley was in a mess. However, when Duguqioma saw this, he shook his head slightly and said, "It's just a meaningless struggle." He reached out his hand, and his devouring power surged out. A black hole appeared in the air above him. As it spun, it seemed capable of devouring all living things. It was the soul-devouring clan's most powerful martial art, the Great God-devouring technique. As soon as the black hole appeared, it seemed to be able to devour everything. The sword chi of Chen Qingxiao's ultimate sword move was directly devoured by it. Although the black hole trembled, it did not shatter. How is this possible? What kind of martial arts is this? Chen Qingxiao's face was as stiff as ice. Duguqioma's endless martial arts moves made him completely dumbfounded. Duguqioma did not answer. Instead, he used the divine movement secret technique and stepped towards Chen Qingxiao. Chen Qingxiao blocked with his sword in front of his chest. Duguqioma's foot landed, and the power of the battle god demon body was fully unleashed. Boom. After the collision, Chen Qingxiao's entire body was sent flying like a cannonball. Duguqioma continued to dash forward and attack. However, he did not really kill Chen Qingxiao. He only injured him again and again, causing his mind to be shaken. Inside and outside the valley, Everyone who saw this scene could not believe their eyes. A dignified genius on the Dragon Phoenix list was actually being suppressed by a dynasty's genius, and he was in such a sorry state. This was definitely the first time. As for the eldest prince and the second princess, they had already lost their souls, and their expressions were numb. After another collision, Chen Qingxiao vomited blood again, and his entire body was severely injured. "Damn it, what do you want?" Chen Qingxiao shouted angrily. Seeing this, Duguqioma activated the power of the soul-devouring demon eye, and his soul power blasted out again. Cough! Chen Qingxiao's sea of consciousness shook violently, but the green spirit pearl was still working. Seeing this, Duguqioma stomped hard on Chen Qingxiao's chest, almost shattering his sternum, and the green spirit sword was also sent flying. Chen Qingxiao vomited blood, and his hair scattered as he screamed. His Dao heart had completely collapsed, and he had never suffered such humiliation before. And this was also the purpose of Duguqioma. When a person's Dao heart collapsed, their soul and sea of consciousness would be at their weakest. As expected, the green spirit pearl in Chen Qingxiao's sea of consciousness began to rapidly dim. Now's a good opportunity. Seeing this, Duguqioma activated the soul-devouring demon eye with all his might. In an instant, the mysterious dark golden eye released a crimson light, and then a speck of crimson light shot out and entered Chen Qingxiao's sea of consciousness. The green spirit pearl wanted to resist, but Duguqioma once again infused his soul power into it, suppressing it. Then the crimson light turned into a crimson seed and entered Chen Qingxiao's sea of consciousness. That crimson seed was the soul-devouring demon seed. From the soul-devouring demon seed, soul tendrils spread out and entered Chen Qingxiao's sea of consciousness to control him. Suddenly, Chen Qingxiao's expression froze. At this moment, if one were to look at his pupils, they would see that there were streaks of blood spreading out from his pupils. Did it work? Duguqioma exhaled, and his face was slightly pale. Using the soul-devouring demon seed required a large amount of soul power, and it also required some origin in the sea of consciousness. Although it was not much, it was still a burden. Therefore, Duguqioma could not use this move without limit. Otherwise, if he could use this move to enslave hundreds or thousands of geniuses, he would be able to do whatever he wanted in the Holy Imperial Realm. I cannot use this move too often. Only those who are useful can be enslaved by me, Duguqioma said. Now Duguqioma could feel that there was a will in his mind to submit to him, and it was from Chen Qingxiao. He could even make the soul-devouring demon seed explode and kill Chen Qingxiao with a single thought. What's going on? At this moment, the people inside and outside the valley looked at the two people who had stopped fighting in confusion. They did not know what had happened. However, what happened next made everyone tongue-tied, as if they had seen a ghost. Chen Qingxiao got up and knelt down in front of Duguqioma, saying, "Your humble servant Chen Qingxiao greets you, master." As soon as he said that, there was a dead silence. Everyone's eyes widened and they took a deep breath. They felt cold sweat on their backs. Could it be that Duguqioma used some method to enslave and control Chen Qingxiao? One of the geniuses was in disbelief. Even in the demonic extermination sect, which was famous for its demonic ways, not many people could use such a terrifying and evil method. However, Duguqioma had used it. Moreover, he had not enslaved any random person. He had enslaved the geniuses on the Dragon Phoenix list of the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion. Duguqioma is going to break the sky. Some of the geniuses were scared out of their wits. They could foresee that Duguqioma's move would cause a huge commotion in the Holy Imperial Realm. Chapter 1237. At this moment, Duguqioma sneered as he looked at Chen Qingxiao, who was kneeling in front of him. That was the result of going against him. Duguqioma could have killed Chen Qingxiao directly, but Chen Qingxiao was a genius on the Dragon Phoenix list. He was still useful and could do many things in the sacred imperial realm. Besides, after planting the demonic seed, Duguqioma could control Chen Qingxiao's life and death with a single thought. Therefore, he was not afraid that Chen Qingxiao would break free from his control. A frog in the well can't talk about the sea, and a summer insect can't talk about the ice. So what if you're a genius on the Dragon Phoenix list? You think too highly of yourself. You're just digging your own grave. Dugu Qiuma looked indifferent. His personality was indeed arrogant and unruly, but he was never arrogant and conceited. Chen Qingxiao, on the other hand, was defeated by his arrogance and condescension. Now the dust had settled. The entire valley was eerily silent. Those geniuses who were watching felt a chill in their hearts. They looked at Yi Guqin as if he was a demon. Compared to death, the feeling of being controlled and becoming a walking corpse was obviously more terrifying. As for the first prince and the second princess of the Great Qian dynasty, they had already lost their souls. Their faces were as pale as paint, and their legs were trembling. Dugu Qiuma calmly walked in front of the two. With a plop, the first prince and the second princess knelt down without any hesitation. They cried and kowtowed. "Young Master Dugu, please forgive us. We were blind to have offended you. Besides, there is no grudge between us." In fact, until now both of them still had doubts. They did not offend Dugu Qiuma. Why did Dugu Qiuma have to go against them? Dugu Qiuma did not explain. He was too lazy to explain. He said calmly, "Since you have placed all your hopes on Chen Qingxiao, let him end your hopes with his own hands." As soon as he finished speaking, Dugu Qiuma had an idea. Chen Qingxiao immediately took action. He held the Qingxiao sword and looked at the first prince and the second princess with murderous intent. Dugu Qiuma's order was an iron law. No, young Master Dugu, please forgive us. We can be your slaves and follow you." The first prince was terrified and hurriedly shook his head. "Follow me? You think too highly of yourselves," Dugu Qiuma said indifferently. At the very least, Chen Qingxiao still had some value. As for them, even Dugu Qiuma felt that they were an eyesore. "No, young Master Chen, wake up." Seeing that Qiuma was not soft-hearted, the first prince and then the second princess couldn't help but shouted. However, Chen Qingxiao acted as if he didn't hear anything. The Qingxiao sword in his hand vibrated, and a green sword light shot toward the two of them. Qiuma of him. To Qiuma Kikiamo Qiuma Kaio Qiuma. Bang! Qiuma of Qiu Chun. Qiu Yuo Qiu. If they were given another chance, they would definitely not carry out such a plan. Then Dugu Qiuma's mind moved again. Chen Qingxiao's face was cold as he charged at the Phoenix Nia Dynasty's group. Princess Phoenix Dawn's expression changed, but it was impossible for her to surrender. She gritted her teeth and resisted. Puff, puff, puff. The cyan sword light swept out, and the Phoenix Nia Dynasty's people fell one by one. In the end, only Princess Fengxi was left holding on bitterly. No matter what, she was still a 7th grade prodigy with the immortal phoenix blood. Even if she was facing Chen Qingxiao, she could still fight back. However, she only had the strength to resist. In Chen Qingxiao's hands, Princess Phoenix Dawn was having a hard time holding on. In the end, Chen Qingxiao's sword stabbed towards Princess Fengxi's forehead. Princess Fengxi closed her eyes in despair. "Stop." An indifferent voice sounded. The sword in Chen Qingxiao's hand suddenly stopped. Princess Phoenix Dawn opened her eyes in astonishment and looked at Dugu Qiuma. To be honest, she also felt that Dugu's begging was very similar to the figure in her memory. However, the two of them only looked similar in appearance. Their style of doing things was completely different. Furthermore, Princess Phoenix Dawn also knew that Yi Guqin was already dead. Now Princess Phoenix Dawn was a little surprised that Dugu's begging would spare her life. "Remember, don't do it again." Dugu's tone was indifferent. Princess Phoenix Dawn had some interactions with Yi Guqin. Although they weren't very close, they were at least acquaintances. Furthermore, Yi Guqin knew everything that happened here, so he wouldn't let Dugu's begging kill Princess Phoenix Dawn. "To thank you." Princess Phoenix Dawn's voice trembled. Being able to live was naturally better than being dead. She glanced at Dugu's begging before looking at Yan Wushuang and the others with a complicated expression. Then she left in a flash. In the end, only Yan Wushuang, Ji Ling, and the other Swallow Cloud Dynasty's prodigies were left in the valley. Yan Wushuang and Ji Ling didn't dare to lower their guard as they looked at the white-haired, devilishly handsome figure. Although Dugu's begging and the figure in their hearts overlapped, They were certain that the two of them weren't the same person. Duga's begging slowly walked over, and his gaze landed on Yan Wushuang. Ji Ling's heart tightened as she stood in front of Yan Wushuang and cupped her hands. Thank you for your help. The reason why she stood in front of him was because she was afraid that Duga's begging was willing to help them because of Yan Wushuang's beauty. Duga's begging was stunned when he saw the girl standing in front of him. Then he smiled faintly. Ji Ling's personality was still the same as before. She was still protecting Yan Wushuang. Are you guys alright? Duga's begging said as he flicked his wrist, and a few Saint Tier healing pills landed in the hands of Yan Wushuang, Ji Ling, and the others. As the Mara dynasty's prince consort, he naturally didn't lack healing pills. Thank you. Yan Wushuang and Ji Ling received the pills, but they weren't used to it. Didn't they say that the white-haired sword demon of the Mara dynasty was cold and emotionless? Why was he treating them so well? Moreover, Ji Ling could also sense that Duga's gaze towards her, and Yan Wushuang wasn't mixed with any other thoughts. The sky prides outside the valley were also speechless. They were incomparably surprised. The decisive and ruthless Duga's begging seemed to have changed into a completely different person. His attitude towards Yan Wushuang and the others was a little too good. The inner circle is too dangerous for you guys right now. However, I can bring you guys to the outer circle to obtain some opportunities. Duga's begging expression was gentle. Such an expression rarely appeared on his face. Why? Yan Wushuang hesitated, but still bit her lip and asked. On her exquisite face, a pair of bright eyes as bright as the morning stars looked straight at Dugu. Dugu Chioma paused, and then he said, just treat it as if someone has always been silently watching you from behind. Someone has been constantly watching me. Yan Wushuang's heart suddenly trembled. She didn't know why, but a drop of tear fell from the corner of her eye. Someone was still silently watching her from behind. Could it be him? Chapter 1238. Yan Wushuang's heart palpitated. It had been more than a year, but she still couldn't forget that youth. Yan Wushuang couldn't help but think of the Sword Dynasty's Jian Kuei, who had saved the Swallow Cloud Dynasty from danger. Could it be him? Yan Wushuang murmured. Soon after, a resolute light surged in her eyes. She must find Jian Kuei and personally verify his identity. Chen Qingxiao, who was being controlled by the Soul Devil Seed, spoke up and cupped his fists at Dugu Qioma. Master, I know of a treasure land in the outer ring called the Nirvana Creation Pool. It has a chance of transforming one's divine dwelling. Oh, there's such a place? Dugu Qioma raised his brows. In fact, Chen Qingxiao had wanted to go to the Nirvana Creation Pool, but was delayed by the ambush plan. After Dugu Qioma received the news, Yi Guchen naturally knew about it immediately. However, he wasn't too interested in the Nirvana Creation Pool, because his divine dwelling only needed to undergo tribulations in various secret realms. He didn't need the Nirvana Creation Pool to transform. The Nirvana Creation Pool was obviously more helpful to Dugu Qioma. Dugu Qioma said, I know of a treasure land. You guys can follow me for the time being. Yan Wushuang hesitated slightly, but Ji Ling's eyes lit up. She was now certain that Dugu Qioma didn't have any ulterior motives towards them. Since that was the case, following Dugu Qioma would be a great guarantee. Thank you, young master Dugu, Ji Ling said gratefully. Dugu Qioma nodded slightly and led Chen Qingxiao, Ji Ling, Yan Wushuang and the rest out of the messy valley. The sky prides in the outer ring of the valley avoided Dugu Qioma like he was the plague. Watching Dugu Qioma and the rest leave, the sky prides were speechless. TSK, what a ruthless person. He even dared to enslave the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion's sky prides. That's right. As one of the 4 great sword pavilions, how could the Imperial Heavenly Sword Pavilion tolerate this? Ao Huang Qianqiu is in the Holy Imperial World as well. How will he react when he learns about this? What other reaction will there be? For the sake of the Imperial Heavenly Sword Pavilion's face, they will definitely not let Dugu Qioma off. If Huang Qianqiu and Dugu Qioma were to fight, who do you think would be stronger? I think it's Huang Qianqiu. After all, he's one of the 4 sovereigns. Although Dugu Qioma isn't weak, he's only comparable to a prodigy on the Dragon Phoenix list, right? Many geniuses were whispering to each other. However, They could imagine the storm that was about to happen in the Holy Imperial Universe. At the same time, outside the sacred Emperor world, the atmosphere was somewhat silent, because the scene in the valley was also imprinted in the void outside the Holy Emperor world. Therefore many people witnessed this scene with their own eyes. Yen He, Yen Chang'e, and the others from the Swallow Cloud dynasty heaved a sigh of relief. A thoughtful look flashed across Yen Chang'e's eyes. Naturally, he could tell that Du Guqiuma and Yi Guqian were somewhat similar. On the other side, Emperor Qian of the Great Qian dynasty was livid. His face was slightly trembling from extreme anger. Total annihilation. All the princes and princesses of the Great Qian dynasty were dead. None of them survived. This was a disaster for the Great Qian dynasty and Emperor Qian. Why? Why is it like this? The veins on Emperor Qian's forehead bulged. He wanted to roar. His eyes were so red that they looked like they were about to bleed. Just a moment ago, he was extremely calm and wanted to watch the Swallow Cloud dynasty's prodigies be annihilated. Who would have thought that his Great Qian dynasty would be annihilated? There was also Empress Fengnie. Her beautiful face was also pale. However, she was slightly better than Emperor Qian. At least Princess Feng, she was still alive. Of course, the angriest one was not Emperor Qian or Empress Fengnie. It was the Imperial Heavenly Sword Pavilion. A group of people was sitting cross-legged in the void. The person in the lead was an elder in a golden robe. The aura he exuded caused the void to distort slightly. He was an extremely powerful heavenly tribulation saint. How dare you enslave the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion's prodigies? What a Du Guqiuma! The Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion saint said coldly. He turned his cold gaze to the Moro dynasty. The demon queen of the Moro dynasty and the others looked uneasy. They felt a sense of pressure. However, according to the rules of the sacred imperial world, it was normal for prodigies to kill each other. Their background was not considered. Therefore, the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion could not interfere. Elder, don't worry. Huang Qianxiu is still in the sacred imperial world. If he knows about this, he won't just stand by and watch. When the time comes, he can kill Du Guqiuma and save Chen Qingxiao. A deacon of the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion said. Yes, indeed. The elder in the golden robe nodded slightly. Huang Qianxiu was the pride of the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion. He was also the most outstanding prodigy of the younger generation. He was known to be someone who could challenge Di Haoyan's position. In their eyes, if Huang Qianxiu were to take action, it would be easy for him to deal with Du Guqiuma. However, the demon queen shook her head secretly and said, Du Guqiuma is unwise. He has offended the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion. The demon queen sighed. She had wanted Du Guqiuma to take care of Princess Luo Ho in the sacred imperial world. But now he could not even protect himself. In the sacred imperial world, somewhere in the sky, a figure was walking in the void. His purple hair fluttered in the void. His deep purple eyes were demonic. His body was slender and strong, like a real dragon. His appearance was handsome and valiant, like a noble descendant of the heavens, domineering and insufferably arrogant. It was Huang Qianxiu. At this moment, he was rushing to the inner circle. This was because the fortuitous opportunities in the outer ring were nothing in his eyes. Of course, the other disciples of the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion had also sent him a message, telling him that Chen Qingxiao had been enslaved by Du Guqiuma. He was enslaved by a dynasty's prodigy. What a disgrace to the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion. Huang Qianxiu was indifferent. He did not have much to do with Chen Qingxiao, but they were from the same faction. If Huang Qianxiu did not express his stance, the outside world might misunderstand that he was afraid of Du Guqiuma. I want to enter the inner circle to seek opportunities. If Du Guqiuma dares to enter the inner circle, tell him to prepare his head. Huang Qianxiu sent a message to an Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion prodigy, wanting to spread his stance. In less than a day, Huang Qianxiu's words spread. Many people were curious. What would Du Guqiuma do in the face of Huang Qianxiu's provocation? However, Du Guqiuma did not say anything. Some people thought that Du Guqiuma might be scared. However, they did not know that Du Guqiuma was bringing Yan Wushuang and the others to the Nirvana creation pool to seek opportunities to transform their spiritual dwellings. On the other hand, Yi Guqin had already plundered many opportunities in the Wanbao Cliff with Su Jiqing. Thank you, young Master Dugu. If not for you, Jiqing would not have been able to safely gather so many resources. Su Jiqing smiled. It was just a matter of convenience. Yi Guqin also smiled faintly. Mr. Dugu, thank you for taking care of me. However, you still have to enter the inner circle, right? Jiqing only needs to search for some opportunities in the outer circle. I won't be a burden to you, Su Jiqing said with a smile. She had already wasted a few days of Yi Guqin's time, and did not want to be a burden to Yi Guqin. Chapter 1239. Yi Guqin nodded. That's good. There are many people who want to kill me in the sacred emperor world. It's not safe for you to stay by my side. Yi Guqin was not worried that Su Jiqing would be a burden to him. He had too many enemies, and Yi Guqin had trouble dealing with them all by himself. Not to mention bringing Su Jiqing along. Su Jiqing would only be a burden to him if she stayed by his side. I understand. Let's part ways here. Su Jiqing smiled. Okay. Take care, Miss Su. Goodbye. Yi Guqin nodded slightly. Then he took a step forward and disappeared into the distance like a bolt of lightning. It was not until Yi Guqin had walked far away that Su Jiqing's face revealed a bitter and helpless smile. Indeed, I can't keep up with you. I can only pray for your safety. Su Jiqing shook her head and smiled bitterly. On the other hand, after leaving Su Jiqing, Yi Guqin continued to move towards the inner circle. Huang Qianqiu is really shameless, Yi Guqin said to himself coldly. Naturally, he had also heard of Huang Qianqiu's words. In Huang Qianqiu's eyes, Dugu Qiuma was someone he could kill easily. Huang Qianqiu, you are known as the proud emperor of the four emperors. But in the end, you will be defeated by your arrogance, Yi Guqin said to himself coldly. Yi Guqin also wanted to kill Huang Qianqiu. Huang Qianqiu was so domineering and arrogant when he broke his spiritual dwelling in the sacred emperor dynasty's treasure trove. It could be said that Gu Xiaoyang, Huang Qianqiu, and Di Haoyan were the three people Yi Guqin must kill. But Huang Qianqiu's cultivation level is not bad. He has reached the 8th level of the divine dwelling realm. I still need to improve my strength, Yi Guqin thought to himself. And my spiritual dwelling needs to be transformed. Yi Guqin needed to transform his spiritual dwelling into a world-class spiritual dwelling within the divine dwelling realm. Only then would he be able to break through to the martial highness realm in the most perfect condition. Therefore, Yi Guqin's top priority was to find a way to transform his divine dwellings. That's right, it seems that in the outer circle area, there is a place called the realm of weak water. The aura of water there is very strong, and it is said that anyone who falls into the water will be submerged forever. Yi Guqin suddenly thought. In the Saint Emperor world, there were all kinds of places of opportunity. Not to mention the inner circle, even the outer circle had many strange places. For example, the 10,000 treasure cliff, the Nirvana fortune pool, the weak water realm and other places. Yi Guqin cultivated the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra. If he wanted to transform into a world-level divine dwelling, he needed to pass the 4 tribulations of earth, water, fire, and wind. Yi Guqin had already passed the first tribulation. Next was the second tribulation, the water tribulation. He needed to find a mystic realm of heaven and earth that was related to water, and the realm of weak water was undoubtedly a suitable place. Of course, Yi Guqin wasn't sure if it could transform his divine dwellings, so he needed to go and explore. Making up his mind, Yi Guqin used the divine movement secret technique and rushed to the location of the realm of weak water. However, halfway there, Yi Guqin encountered some heaven's prides and inquired about some news. In the realm of weak water, there was a palace emerging from the water, which attracted the attention of many people. And there was another more important news, which was that the Sword Dynasty, the War God Dynasty, the Tyrant Saber Dynasty, and the Moro Dynasty, the 4 top dynasties had gathered in the realm of weak water, and a war had broken out. Some sword sons of the Sword Dynasty were being besieged by the heaven's prides of the 3 dynasties. Not good, their situation is not good. The corner of Yi Guqin's eyes twitched. Since the outbreak of the last dynasty war, the armies of the 3 dynasties were all wiped out. The three dynasties had been targeting the Sword Dynasty. Although Duguqiu Emo had solved the crisis of the Great Qian Dynasty and the Phoenix Nia Dynasty, but the crisis of the three dynasties had not been resolved. If anything happens to them, Yi Guqin will definitely massacre the three dynasties. Yi Guqin's eyes were bursting with anger, his black hair fluttering, and he used the divine movement secret technique to rush to the realm of weak water at an extremely fast speed, hoping that he could make it in time. And on the other side, somewhere in the outer ring area, as far as the eye could see, there was a swamp, blue and deep. In the misty water, a palace could be vaguely seen, as if floating in the middle of the water. This place was the realm of weak water in the outer ring area. And at this moment, on the shore of the realm of weak water, a large number of figures had gathered. Many people's eyes fell on the two sides confronting each other in the field, with a look of watching a show. Enemies meet. The heavens prides of the four dynasties have all come here. Some heavens prides of the other dynasties whispered to each other. Obviously, the appearance of the palace in the realm of weak water had attracted a large number of people, including the people of the four dynasties. And now the two sides confronting each other in the field. One side was the Sword Dynasty, and the other side was the other three dynasties. On the Sword Dynasty's side, Yi Guqin, Jian Jinghong, Xuanlian and other pillar-level fighting forces were not present. Leading them were the fourth sword Jiang Fingmian, Jianwu, Ling Emoshu, and the sixth sword Su Zihao. There was also the seventh sword Mu Xingzu, the eighth sword Yushan, Kempo Xiaojun, Jianxi, Han Lingxian, and the 12th sword Ling Mayin. In addition, Suki Miyazaki and Kong Kong were also not present. In other words, there were only 8 sword sons in the realm of weak water, and the head fighting forces were not present. And on the other side were the heavens prides of the three dynasties. Although not all of them were present, but the number of heavens prides of the three dynasties added together was far more than the 8 sword sons of the Sword Dynasty. On the War God Dynasty's side, Zhao Weihuang, Zhong Shan, and Zhang Bubi were all present. As for Zhao Shinkong and Zhao Xiaodi, they were not present. On the Moro Dynasty's side, there was only Princess Luoho. However, Princess Luoho's fighting strength was not to be underestimated. Among the heavens prides of the dynasty, she was at the top level. On the Tyrant Saber Dynasty's side, there was also a group of heavens prides on the Saber list, but the number 1 on the Saber list, Zhang Sun Aojue, was not present. The one holding the fort was the number 2 on the Saber list, Desolate Saber, Feng Shalai. As for the number 3 on the Saber list, Jin Taiji, he had already been killed by Yi Guqin. At this moment, the two forces were facing each other, and the atmosphere was tense. Do you really think that the sword sons of the Sword Dynasty are made of clay? If you want to fight, we will not back down. Jiang Fingmian said coldly, holding the maple leaf sword in his hand. Heh. So what if you resist? Without Jian Jinghong, Xuanlian and the others, you are just a bunch of chickens and pottery dogs. The only pity is that Dugu Wubai did not appear. Otherwise, I would have killed him with my own hands. Zhao Weihuang's expression was cruel and ruthless. His hatred for the Sword Dynasty and Yi Guqin could not be washed away by all the water in the world. There's no need to talk nonsense. Let's get rid of them. Otherwise, it will be troublesome if the other sword sons arrive. On the Tyrant Saber Dynasty's side, the number 3 on the Saber list, Feng Shalian, said coldly, "That's right, we need to get rid of them as soon as possible." Princess Luoho also spoke. She did not know about the relationship between Dugu Wubai and Yi Guqin. Her attitude towards Yi Guqin was still based on the conflict in the Sacred Dynasty's inheritance. Therefore, she did not have the slightest good impression of the Sword Dynasty. Good. Today, I will let the blood of the Sword Dynasty's sword sons spill over the earth. Zhao Weihuang raised the tiger head deep golden spear in his hand, and a torrential spear light burst out. Feng Shalian, Princess Luoho, and the others also made their moves. Good timing. I haven't settled the score from the dynasty war with you. Now I will settle it all. Ling Emoshu held his sword with one hand, and sword chi burst out. Do you think my Sword Dynasty is afraid of you? None of the 13 sword sons are cowards. Mu Xingzu also shouted, her fine black hair fluttering in the wind as sword chi filled the sky. She was like a heroine, a heroine. The Sword Dynasty's sword sons, and the three dynasties' heaven's prides, had begun their battle. Heaven and earth changed colors and killing intent filled the air. Both inside and outside the holy imperial world, everyone was watching. Chapter 1240. Among the 100 great dynasties, the 4 great dynasties were the most eye-catching. At most, the Sky Star dynasty was one of them. Therefore, it could be seen how eye-catching this battle would be, attracting the attention of everyone. Around the realm of Weakwater, thousands of Sky Prides stopped to watch the battle between the 4 great dynasties. However, this battle was obviously not on equal footing. Although the top Sky Prides of both sides had not arrived, in terms of numbers and strength, the Sky Prides of the 3 great dynasties obviously had the absolute advantage. However, none of the sword sons of the Sword Dynasty were cowards. Kill. Without any superfluous words, the battle erupted. Jiang Fengmian's genuine qi surged as he waved the maple leaf sword in his hand. The sword qi turned into maple leaves and scattered in all directions. Autumn maple sword dance. A mighty sword qi swept out. Ling Emoshu, Su Zihao, and the others also attacked at the same time without any hesitation or fear. Mu Xingzu, Han Lingxian, Ling Mayin, and the other women were not inferior to men. Their faces were filled with cold-killing intent and determination. They did not show any fear because of the predicament in front of them. How can a bunch of ants have the power to resist? Seeing this, Zhao Weihuang's mouth revealed a cold smile. In his hand, the tiger-head clear golden spear pierced out, as if it carried the power of wind and thunder. It tore through the air and shot out. Wind Thunder Sky Strike. Zhao Weihuang's attack seemed to be able to shatter the sky. The clouds in the sky were pierced, and a big hole appeared. His strength was not much weaker than Zhao Shinkong's. He was an extremely strong opponent. At the same time, Zhongshan, Zhan Bubi, and the other Sky Prides of the War God Dynasty also attacked. Princess Luo Ho of the Maluo Dynasty also attacked. Holding the death scythe in her hand, she looked like a beautiful death goddess. Black Moon Slash. The death scythe slashed down, and the pitch-black light of the scythe was like a black crescent moon. Feng Shalai of the Domineering Blade Dynasty, and the others also attacked. Feng Shalai held the desolate blade in his hand and slashed out. The air of desolation spread out, and the surrounding earth seemed to crack, becoming barren. The battle unfolded. Genuine qi ripples burst out, and the entire Weakwater realm of Weakwater was in chaos. The sword radiance shook the sky, the saber energy covered the ground. The spear energy shocked the world, and the air waves splashed in all directions. It could be said that this was an extremely intense battle. Although there were no geniuses from the transcendent powers participating, the battle was still extremely intense. Boom. After the collision, Ling Emoshu's blood and qi surged in his chest. His opponent was Zhao Weihuang. Even though Ling Emoshu's one-handed sword was extraordinary and his flawless divine dwelling had transformed, it was still difficult for him to resist Zhao Weihuang. Die. Zhao Weihuang was like a god of war, his aura powerful and imposing. Dazzling and resplendent spear light accompanied by the terrifying qi of the 6th layer of the divine dwelling realm rumbled over. Be careful. Upon seeing this, Jiang Fengmian raised his sword to assist. He joined forces with Ling Emoshu to resist Zhao Weihuang's tyrannical spear light. Boom. The sound of metal clanging could be heard, as if it was the sound of iron being forged. Jiang Fengmian and Ling Emoshu both retreated more than 10 steps, their blood boiling. Zhao Weihuang also retreated more than 10 steps, but he was clearly more relaxed. Leave him to me. You go and help the others, Jiang Fengmian said. In terms of ranking, he was considered the highest here, so he was willing to take on the responsibility. You be careful. Ling Emoshu's expression was grave. He also knew that Zhao Weihuang's spear was fierce and tyrannical, while his one-handed sword was flexible and difficult to resist. It was not just the two of them. The other sword sons were also in danger. Mu Xingzu was fighting with Princess Luo Ho. There were many women among the 13 sword sons, and Mu Xingzu's combat strength should be the strongest among the women. After all, she was Yi Guqin's disciple and had Ying Ning's primordial spirit in her body. She had inherited Ying Ning's special ability, the indestructible soul pearl, and the peerless soul sword Dao. Mu Xingzu was stronger than Suki Miyazaki, Han Lingxian and Ling Mayin. At this moment, she took the initiative to take on the difficult Princess Luo Ho. Around her, soul power surged and turned into translucent soul swords that surrounded Princess Luo Ho. As Dugu Wubai's disciple, you do have some skills. Princess Luo Ho did not let her guard down, and also used her strongest move. On the other side, the other sword sons were in a more difficult situation. Yushan spat out a mouthful of blood and coldly stared at the blade-wielding figure opposite him. Feng Shalian's expression was playful. So this is the #1 sword dynasty of the 100 great dynasties? To think that you're so weak. Aren't you sword cultivators supposed to be unyielding? Let's see how long you can hold on today. Feng Shalian's expression was relaxed, as if there was no pressure at all, and he mocked the sword dynasty. Sword cultivators and saber cultivators were naturally at odds. Just like the sword sex Talon and the saber monarch's palace in the Saint Origin dynasty, the sword dynasty and the tyrant saber dynasty often had conflicts with each other. Humph, if Jian Kuei and the others were here, you wouldn't have the right to speak. Moreover, don't forget that Jin Taiji, the #3 on the saber ranking, died at the hands of Jian Kuei. Yushan sneered as he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Hearing this, Feng Shalian and the other geniuses on the saber ranking darkened their faces. This news had already spread throughout the Holy Imperial world, and the geniuses of the Tyrant Saber dynasty were embarrassed. After all, Jin Taiji's ranking on the saber ranking was not low, but he had died at the hands of Jian Kuei, whose spiritual dwelling had been destroyed. This was a great humiliation for the Tyrant Saber dynasty. Who knows if Jian Kuei played some dirty tricks? Moreover, if he dares to appear, I will use the Baron's saber in my hand to cut off his head and cleanse the Tyrant Saber dynasty's name. Feng Shalian said coldly. I'm afraid you don't have the guts. Yushan said coldly. You're courting death. Feng Shalian attacked again, and the other geniuses of the Tyrant Saber dynasty followed suit. Let me help you. Not far away, Su Zihao, Xiao Jun, and the others saw that Yushan was surrounded by the Tyrant Saber dynasty, and immediately wanted to help. However, in the blink of an eye, several figures appeared in front of them. It was Zhongshan Zhanbubi, and the others from the War God dynasty. Your opponent is me, so don't worry. Zhongshan's tone was cold and vicious. His father, the heroic martial marquis, had died in the war between the dynasties, and his status was no longer what it used to be. His hatred for Yi Guqin and the Sword Dynasty was no less than Zhao Weihuang's. If he had the chance, Zhongshan would kill all 13 sword sons. You are really unscrupulous. Even Su Zihao, who had always been calm, was angry and filled with murderous intent. There was no such thing as fairness in the Holy Imperial world. However, this kind of grand encirclement was indeed somewhat unbearable. While Zhongshan was entangling Su Zihao and the others, Feng Shalian and the others were attacking Yushan. In fact, Feng Shalian alone was enough to deal with Yushan, but they insisted on using the tactic of attrition to humiliate and toy with the Sword Dynasty's sword son. Yushan was injured again and again, spitting out blood. His body was covered with saber wounds, and he looked miserable. The other sword sons were all entangled with their opponents and could not come to his aid. In the end, Feng Shalian seemed to be tired of playing. His footsteps flashed, and the desolate saber in his hand slashed out. What a boring hunt. Go to hell. Feng Shalian's saber cut Yushan's body in half, and blood sprayed everywhere. A sword son of the Sword Dynasty had fallen. Chapter 1241. Fresh blood splattered everywhere. Yushan did not make a sound even though he was facing death, and there was not a trace of fear on his face. He only felt that it was a pity that he would no longer have the chance to contribute to the Sword Dynasty. No. Seeing Yushan fall, Su Zihao, Xiao Jun and the others all cried out. Because like Yushan, they were the previous generation's sword sons. They were partners, comrades, and had fought together for the glory of the Sword Dynasty. But now, Yushan's body was lying in a pool of blood, gradually turning cold. This was the first sword son of the Sword Dynasty to fall in the Holy Imperial world. Around the realm of Weakwater, Thousands of sky prides were silent, feeling a little unbelievable. The 13 sword sons of the Sword Dynasty were high and mighty, and were the most outstanding existences in the 100 great dynasties. But now, a sword son had fallen, and his body was split in two, lying in a pool of blood. This kind of influence was huge. As long as a sword son fell, it would leave a certain impression on the others. The 13 sword sons were not invincible existences. This kind of impression was very terrifying, and it would make people lose their respect for the 13 sword sons. And this was what Feng Shalai and the others wanted to see. Damn it! Su Zihao, Xiaojun, and the others' eyes were blood red. Even Jiang Fengmian, Ling Emoshu Mu Xingzu, and the others, who did not have a deep relationship with Yushan, were incomparably angry while feeling heartache. The 13 sword sons were bound together for good and for ill. Die. Su Zihao drew his sword, and the sword light pierced through the sky, piercing through Feng Shalai. Haha, this is just the beginning. Next, you 13 sword sons will die one by one. Feng Shalai laughed. The 3 dynasties had already communicated that they would destroy the 13 sword sons in the Holy Imperial World. Clang. Feng Shalai's saber slashed out, colliding with Su Zihao. The remaining sky prides of the 3 dynasties continued to attack. The Sword Dynasty was in an extremely bad situation. The Sword Dynasty, which was already at a disadvantage, fell into a great crisis after Yushan's death. Most importantly, Feng Shalai and the others wanted to focus their attacks and kill the next sword master. The next target they locked onto was Xiao Jun. Since you have such a brotherly relationship with him, then go to hell with him. Feng Shalai sneered. He led a group of geniuses on the broadsword roll to besiege Xiao Jun again. As for the other sword sons, they were tied down by the War God Dynasty, Princess Luoho, and the others. Get out of the way. Su Zihao's eyes were bloodshot as killing intent filled the sky. Zhongshan, on the other hand, flashed and restrained Su Zihao. Jiang Fengmian, Ling Emoshu, and the others were entangled by Zhao Weihuang and the others. Pooh. Facing this kind of concentrated fire siege, Xiao Jun also found it hard to withstand, coughing up blood from his mouth incessantly. However, he didn't ask for help, nor did he beg for mercy. Instead, he fought until the very last moment. When one of the outstanding talents on the saber ranking stabbed his saber into Xiao Jun's body, Xiao Jun also stabbed his sword into his opponent's heart. Blood for blood, life for life. In the end, Xiao Jun died. The second sword son had fallen. This caused an uproar, and all the geniuses sucked in a breath of air. Today, could it be that the 8 sword sons present would all fall? If that was the case, it would definitely set off monstrous waves, and Jian Jinghong and the others would definitely madly seek revenge. Next, it's your turn. Feng Shalai turned his gaze to Su Zihao. Besieging them one by one was the safest method. Moreover, with top geniuses like Zhao Weihuang and Princess Luoho around, it would be difficult for the Sword Dynasty's sword son to escape. When Su Zihao heard this, there was no fear on his face. Boundless anger had already drowned out his rationality. The fall of Yushan and Xiao Jun made Su Zihao burn with rage. Kill. Without any superfluous words, Su Zihao directly attacked. He was determined to die. Even if he died in the end, he would exchange his life for Feng Shalai's and eliminate him. The battle continued, bloody and cruel. The entire ground outside the Weakwater realm was a mess. Boom. After a powerful collision, Su Zihao's figure was continuously pushed back. The other outstanding talents on the saber ranking surrounded him again, attacking Su Zihao's weak points. Not good. Mu Xingzu, Jiang Fengmian, Ling Emoshu, and the others were anxious, but they could not break free from the suppression of their opponents. The third sword son is about to fall. Feng Shalai laughed coldly. All the surrounding geniuses focused their attention. If Su Zihao fell, then the remaining sword son would have a harder time holding on. Su Zihao gritted his teeth, wanting to burn the true qi in his body, and burst out with his last strength. At this moment, the sound of wind and lightning exploded in the distant sky. Everyone heard the sound and looked over, only to see a bolt of lightning, like a sudden clap of thunder, cutting through the heavy evening mist. 3 dynasties, how dare you! A deafening roar seemed to be able to kill all the gods and Buddhas in the sky. Who is it? Everyone was shocked. They only felt a powerful aura, like a black cloud pressing down on them, covering thousands of miles in the sky. Clang! The figure shrouded in lightning kicked out with his foot. A divine weapon wrapped in endless lightning broke through the sky. It tore through the sky, pierced through the clouds, and crashed into the battlefield with the power of thunder, heading straight for Feng Shalai and the others. Feng Shalai and the other geniuses on the saber roll hurriedly turned their sabers to resist the incoming attack. Boom! Thunder rolled out, and 9-colored lightning surged in all directions. Several geniuses on the saber roll screamed, and their bodies exploded. Blood dripped, and their bones were broken like blooming flowers of blood. Feng Shalai was also shaken, and he retreated, looking at the distant sky in surprise. It's him. He's here. On the other side, Zhongshan saw the person coming, and his body suddenly trembled. He had already guessed who it was, so he still had lingering fears. Thousands of gazes were cast toward the sky. When the lightning dissipated, a slender figure wearing a ghost mask stood above the 9 heavens. His black hair fluttered, and his aura was unyielding. His murderous intent was shocking, as if a god had descended. It was Yi Guchen. It's Jian Kuei from the Sword Dynasty. He's here. Exclamations came from all around, and many geniuses' pupils shrank. Among all the geniuses from various dynasties, Jian Kuei was definitely the most eye-catching one. Huang Qianqiu had broken his spiritual dwelling, and he had also set a shocking record in the martial tablet. Before that, he had killed Jin Taiji, the third on the saber roll from the Tyrant Saber Dynasty, and the Starry Sky Dynasty's geniuses. It could be said that no matter where he was, Yi Guchen was always the most eye-catching one. Master! Mu Xingzu was overjoyed. Brother Dugu, Su Zihao, Jiang Fingmian, and the others were also excited. Yi Guchen, as the Jian Kuei, was the leader of the 13 swordsmen. He was like a backbone. As long as he appeared, he could suppress any situation. At this moment, Yi Guchen's gaze fell on the 2 corpses lying in a pool of blood. His eyes were incomparably cold. Although his relationship with Yushan and Xiao Jun was not as close as Mu Xingzu's, but he was the Jian Kuei from the Sword Dynasty, and the leader of the 13 swordsmen. He had an unshirkable responsibility for the 2 swordsmen's deaths. Yi Guchen's gaze was as cold as ice as it swept across Zhao Weihuang, Zhongshan, Feng Shalai, and the other geniuses of the 3 dynasties. There are thousands of paths to survival in this world, but you all are courting death. It's not too late to go to the Yellow Springs and atone for your sins to the 2 swordsmen. Chapter 1242. Yi Guchen's words were like a clap of thunder, ringing in everyone's ears. The faces of many heavens' prides froze. They looked at each other and saw the horror in each other's eyes. Judging from Yi Guchen's words, he didn't want to let the people of the 3 dynasties go. He wanted to kill them all. But was that possible? Although Yi Guchen's strength wasn't weak, it hadn't reached the level where he could defeat all his enemies. Feng Shalai sneered. Jian Kuei of the Sword Dynasty, I've long heard that you're extremely arrogant. It seems that it's true. A person with a broken divine dwelling thinks he's invincible just because he has a strong body? Yi Guchen's shocking appearance had indeed intimidated Feng Shalai. But now that he thought about it carefully, Feng Shalai thought that Yi Guchen was probably deliberately mystifying them. He wanted to intimidate them and make them fear him so that they would leave on their own. Feng Shalai was confident that he could see through this empty fort strategy. Yi Guchen didn't say a word. Anything he said now would be superfluous. The death of the 2 sword sons had completely aroused Yi Guchen's anger. He didn't say anything else and used the divine movement secret technique. His whole body was like a bolt of lightning that streaked across the sky, rushing straight towards Feng Shalai. You think I'm afraid of you? Feng Shalai held the desolate blade in his hand, and erupted with the aura of a 5th-layer divine dwelling. Although Feng Shalai was slightly inferior to those top heavens' prides, his strength was definitely not weak. Yi Guchen didn't use his true qi. He didn't need to use his full strength to deal with Feng Shalai. The sealed heart of the ancient god in his body was beating, and vigorous ancient god power surged out. He threw out a punch, and his fist radiance illuminated the world. It was as if it had illuminated the gloomy sky and dyed it a golden color. Feng Shalie's relaxed expression suddenly changed. He could feel that the terrifying power bursting out from Yi Guqin's body had almost sucked away all the air around him, forming a vacuum in front of the fist's light. Feng Shalai slashed out with the desolate blade in his hand, bursting with the power of desolation, and colliding with Yi Guqin's move. Rumble! It was as if a sudden clap of thunder shook the world as great waves burst forth. Feng Shalai felt as if another divine elephant of the immemorial era had rammed into him. His arm that was holding the saber let out a series of cracking sounds as cracks spread all over his bones. Cough! A mouthful of blood spurted out from Feng Shalie's mouth. Yi Guqin held the 9-dragon thunder prison in his hand, and simply slashed down with his sword. Even without using his true energy, the 9-dragon thunder prison emitted a monstrous amount of lightning. Clang! The 9-dragon thunder prison collided with Feng Shalie's desolate blade. Once again, Feng Shalie's body shook as he tasted blood in his throat. Clang! 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 A series of sparks shot out. Yi Guqin's divine movement secret technique was extremely fast, giving Feng Shalie no time to react. Damn it! Feng Shalie was furious, but at the same time his heart trembled. He never thought that someone who couldn't even use true qi would be so powerful. Attack together! Feng Shalie roared. The other sky prides from the tyrannical saber empire heard him, and charged forward with their sabers. All of you must die. Yi Guqin's eyes were cold. At this moment he seemed to have turned into the Grim Reaper. Every time he attacked, his sword would pierce through the body of a sky pride on the saber roll. Blood splattered and stained his grimace mask, adding to his murderous aura. The thousands of spectating sky prides were dumbfounded by Lin Fan's powerful attack. Jiankui, don't be so arrogant. Feng Shalie saw this and attacked as well. He poured his true energy into the desolate blade, and a desolate aura burst out. He slashed out with his saber, and a ferocious saber aura condensed and slashed toward Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin's 9-dragon thunder prison appeared. Lightning shot out and blocked this powerful attack. At the same time he stretched out his hand. Ancient god power surged out and finally condensed into a golden spear. It was the ancient god clan's unique skill, the ancient god spear. What kind of move is this? Feng Shalie was so shocked that he couldn't help but exclaim. He thought that Yi Guqin couldn't use his true energy, so he couldn't use his martial arts. But now this sudden move had caught him off guard. Whoosh! The golden ancient god spear seemed to pierce through the void and directly pierce Feng Shalie's body. Yi Guqin had grasped this opportunity very well. It happened at the moment when Feng Shalie couldn't defend himself. Feng Shalie had underestimated his opponent, so he was hit. Slash! The ancient god spear directly pierced Feng Shalie's heart. His eyes widened, as if he couldn't believe that he would die in such a way. Remember to repent when you go to hell. Yi Guqin's wrist shook, and a violent burst of ancient god power exploded. Feng Shalie's entire body exploded, and blood splattered everywhere. Feng Shalie, second on the saber roll of the tyrannical saber dynasty, had fallen. The whole place was shocked, and it was dead silent. Yi Guqin's thunderous means terrified everyone. With a sweep of his sword, the remaining Overlord Saber Dynasty geniuses were also shattered and cut in half. The Overlord Saber Dynasty geniuses who came here were all killed. What a ruthless person. He didn't show any mercy. If Zhangsun Aojue knew about this, there would be a big battle later. Many geniuses sighed. Zhangsun Aojue was the first on the saber ranking of the Overlord Saber Dynasty. If he knew that Yi Guqin had killed the second and third geniuses on the saber ranking, he would definitely not let Yi Guqin go. But now, because of Yi Guqin's thunderous means, the situation seemed to have been turned around. Yi Guqin's cold eyes swept over the remaining people. Zhao Weihuang was still fine. Although there was a hint of surprise and seriousness in his eyes, he was still very calm. This was the confidence that his strength gave him. However, the other War God Dynasty geniuses weren't as calm as Zhao Weihuang. Especially Zhongshan, who had a grudge against Yi Guqin. They had been in conflict since the Sacred Dynasty's treasure. Although I don't take you seriously at all, you're courting death this time. Yi Guqin continued to attack, charging towards Zhongshan and the others. Yi Guchen didn't take a so-called genius like Zhongshan seriously at all. But he didn't expect that the more annoying a fly was, the more annoying it was. The two sword sons had fallen because Zhongshan was entangled with the other sword sons. Therefore, Yi Guchen didn't hesitate to attack and directly stabbed his sword. Jiankui, let me fight you. Zhao Weihuang straightened his body and was about to attack. It's your own genius' turn to be in danger, and you're so anxious. Jiang Fengmian wouldn't sit back and watch Zhao Weihuang attack, so he kept Zhao Weihuang occupied. Run! Seeing that Zhao Weihuang was entangled, Zhongshan and the others didn't say anything and immediately fled. From the combat power Yi Guchen displayed, they knew that they had no chance of winning. From the moment you decided to target the Sword Dynasty, you should have known that you were already dead. Yi Guchen had no mercy for Zhongshan and the others. The sword in his hand vibrated, and the lightning sword light tore through the void. No! Zhongshan and the others were shocked and cried out in despair. Chapter 1243. Swish. The sword radiance flashed across the sky and hit Zhongshan. He let out a blood-curdling scream as his chest was directly pierced through. Before he could run a few steps, his body fell to the ground. His eyes were wide open and unfocused. There was fear, regret, unwillingness, and many other emotions in his eyes. Yi Guchen did not stop. Next, Zhan Bubi and the other geniuses of the War God dynasty died one after another under Yi Guchen's sword. Damn it! Zhao Weihuang was furious. He was very calm and carefree when he killed the Sword Dynasty. But now, it was the geniuses of the War God dynasty who were being slaughtered. Zhao Weihuang was furious. Jiankui, fight me if you have the guts. What's the point of bullying them? Zhao Weihuang shouted angrily. When you killed the sword son of the Sword Dynasty, you were not so fair. Yi Guchen sneered and continued to attack. Before long, all the geniuses of the War God dynasty died at the hands of Yi Guchen. On the other side, Princess Luoho, who was fighting with Mu Xingzu, retreated after one attack. She was still afraid of Yi Guchen. After all, Yi Guchen's ultimate sword domain in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure had shocked her. Also, Princess Luoho remembered what Duguqioma said to her. If she ran into Jiankui of the Sword Dynasty in the Sacred Imperial Realm, she must not attack him. Forget it. Qioma will take care of him when the time comes. I don't need to continue fighting here. Princess Luoho made up her mind. She discerned as well that the three dynasties had already lost, so it was practically impossible to besiege and kill the remaining sword son. It was even to the extent that it might cause her to fall into a dangerous situation instead. Princess Luoho was very decisive. She retreated without any hesitation. Yi Guchen's eyes flashed when he saw Princess Luoho retreating. But he did not make a move. He did it because of Duguqioma. Furthermore, Princess Luoho wasn't weak. With her Luoho life providence, it was very difficult to keep her here. Princess Luoxiu. Seeing Princess Luoho leave, Zhao Weihuang's expression finally changed. Now all the geniuses of the tyrannical Saber dynasty had fallen. Zhongshan and Zhan Bubi from the War God Empire were also killed by Yi Guchen. Right now, only he and a few other prodigies from the War God dynasty were at an absolute disadvantage. Jiang Fengmian, Ling Emoshu Mu Xingzu, and the other sword sons all locked their gazes on Zhao Weihuang, as if they were hunters staring at their prey. Damn it, let's retreat too. Zhao Weihuang was not stupid. If he continued to fight, even he would be in danger of dying. You think you can leave? Yi Guchen also made his move. His ancient god power surged, forming a huge seal that seemed capable of suppressing the heavens. It was the ancient god king's seal. When the seal smashed down, it was as if the earth was trembling. Damn it, what kind of technique is this? Zhao Weihuang raised the tiger head deep golden spear, and shot out a spear light that collided with the ancient god king's seal. His body trembled, and a powerful rebounding force came crashing down on him. If he wasn't wearing the black gold tiger battle armor, he would have been injured by the force. Jiang Fengmian, Ling Emoshu Mu Xingzu, and the others also attacked together with rage. Puchi, the few remaining prodigies from the War God Empire, had also perished under the ferocious attacks. In the end, only Zhao Weihuang was left. Get out of my way! Zhao Weihuang roared and released the aura of the sixth firmament of the divine dwelling realm. Demon Spear Art Demon Rampage. Zhao Weihuang's true qi burst out like a demon in the spear. He swept out his spear and violently collided with the moves of Yi Guqin and the others. Rumble. Puff. Zhao Weihuang's black gold tiger battle armor trembled violently as he spat out blood. No matter how strong Zhao Weihuang was, he couldn't stop Yi Guqin and the others. Die for Yushan and Xiaojun. Su Zihao roared. Jiang Fengmian, Ling Emoshu, and the others also attacked fiercely, their swords tearing through the air. Under such an impenetrable siege, Zhao Weihuang couldn't escape even if he wanted to. He could only passively defend. More and more wounds appeared on his body, and his injuries became more and more serious. Yi Guqin didn't attack. Instead, he locked onto Zhao Weihuang. As soon as he showed signs of escaping, Yi Guqin would immediately cut off his escape route. You treated others like a turtle in a jar, but now you've become a caged beast yourself. How does this feel? Yi Guqin said coldly. Zhao Weihuang didn't say a word. His face was red from anger, and he felt extremely sullen. He was ranked second on the War God list, the son of the Earth War Emperor. In the War God dynasty, he could be said to be invincible. Even in the Holy Imperial Universe, as long as he didn't meet the geniuses of the Overlord forces, he could look down on everyone. Even if he met the geniuses of the Overlord forces, he wouldn't be afraid. His powerful strength gave him confidence. But now, Zhao Weihuang's chin was bleeding and his body was covered in wounds. He was in a sorry state. If this goes on, it will be troublesome. Zhao Weihuang's eyes darkened. The way he looked at Yi Guqin was like a snake choosing its prey. It's about time. Yi Guqin murmured to himself. He didn't want to delay any longer. After all, he still wanted to enter the realm of weak water, to find the opportunity to transform his spiritual dwelling. Thinking of this, Yi Guqin activated his ancient god power again, and condensed it into a golden seal. The ancient god king's seal suppressed Zhao Weihuang again. Demonic Spear Art. Wrath of Demonic Might. Seeing this, Zhao Weihuang attacked forcefully. The tiger head clear golden spear splashed in all directions. There was another collision. Zhao Weihuang was forced to retreat. He was already injured and couldn't be compared to Yi Guqin. However, after the first attack, Jiang Fengmian, Ling Emoshu, and the others were about to attack again. Am I really going to die here today? Zhao Weihuang wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His eyes were cold. But at this moment, a voice suddenly came from afar. Oh, it's quite lively here. As the voice came out, 4 figures stepped on the air and came over. They were 4 young men in silver. Their faces were similar. They were quadruplets. They were the 4 young Star Lords of the Starry Sword Pavilion. It's the 4 young Star Lords of the Starry Sword Pavilion. Seeing the 4 figures appear at the same time, the surrounding geniuses exclaimed. The 4 young Star Lords were the 4 most brilliant geniuses in the Nantian region. If any of them stood out, they would be able to sweep away an entire region. Not to mention, if all 4 of them came together, even the prodigies of the 4 emperors might not be able to suppress them. It's them. Yi Guqin's eyes were cold. He hated the Starry Sword Pavilion to the extreme. However, there was actually another young man beside the 4 young Star Lords. It was Crown Prince Xingyang of the Stellar Sky Empire. His gaze also landed on Yi Guqin. His eyes immediately became cold and sharp. He's here too. Crown Prince Xingyang's face was very cold. This was because Yi Guqin had killed Prince Xinglu and Princess Xingxian of the Stellar Sky Empire. He was looking down on the Stellar Sky Empire. He then glanced at the 4 young Star Lords. His eyes swiveled as various schemes flashed through them. Heh, Jiankui, how dare you kill people of my Stellar Sky Empire? I'll force you into a dead end today. Crown Prince Xingyang thought viciously. Chapter 1244. The arrival of the 4 Star Lords changed the atmosphere outside the realm of Ruoshui. The prodigies of the Overlord-level forces would attract attention wherever they went. In the past, most of the opportunities in the Saint Emperor world were obtained by the Overlord-level forces. At this moment, The 4-star lords looked at the battle between the empires like they were watching a show. It was like they were watching a battle between ants. Prince Xingyang glanced at Yi Guqin coldly, then said to the 4-star lords, "Sirs, it's them. They killed 2 of the princes and princesses of the Star Empire." "Oh really?" Jiang Yuanlong, the 4th of the 4-star lords, said. He was not too angry. The Star Empire and the Starry Sword Pavilion were connected in countless ways, but they were not too close. As a result, they were not too angry about the deaths of the princes and princesses of the Star Empire. Even so, the Star Empire was still backed by the Starry Sword Pavilion in name, so they could not ignore it. On the other side, Yi Guqin's eyes were cold when he saw the arrival of the 4-star lords. "Whatever, let's kill Zhao Weihuang first." Yi Guqin made up his mind and attacked even more viciously. He swung his sword at Zhao Weihuang. At this moment, Jiang Yuanlong pointed with his finger. The vigorous real qi of the stars burst out. It rolled and condensed into a giant real qi finger. Then, it pointed at Yi Guqin. Seeing this, Yi Guqin had no choice but to deflect the tip of his sword. Then, he turned his sword around to attack the giant finger made of real qi. Boom! There was a blast of air, and Yi Guqin took a few steps back. Jiang Fengmian, Ling Emoshu and the others were all shocked when they saw this. Were the 4-star lords going to stand up for the War God Empire? Taking advantage of this gap, Zhao Weihuang stomped his feet on the ground. With a loud bang, his body shot into the distance like a cannonball. "Sword Dynasty Jiankui, just you wait. Zhao Weihuang will remember this." Zhao Weihuang's furious roar was like thunder, shaking everyone's eardrums. It was obvious that he would take revenge in the future. The War God dynasty had lost many people in this battle. However, Zhao Shenkong, Zhao Xiaodi, and the other prodigies were still around. They could still pose a threat to the Sword Dynasty. With Zhao Weihuang's speed, he quickly flew into the distance. He turned his head back, his gaze incomparably sinister. "Jiankui, just you wait. Not only do I want Zhao Shenkong to take action, but I also want to rope in an even better ally. Right, that Dugu Qioma of the Moro dynasty can even suppress Chen Qingxiao. If I can rope him in, I'll definitely be able to wipe out the Sword Dynasty." Zhao Weihuang's eyes flashed with a cold smile as he made up his mind. And on the side of the weak water realm, the faces of the Sword Dynasty's swordsmen were not looking too good. Damn it! Jiang Fengmian, Ling Emoshu, and the others were secretly enraged. They couldn't help but turn to look at Jiang Yuanlong. It was because he had stopped Yi Guqin that Zhao Weihuang had been able to escape. What is the meaning of this? Yi Guqin's expression was cold as he spoke in a low voice. He already hated the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion to the extreme, and now his impression of them was even worse. "Haha, you are the Sword Sons of the Sword Dynasty. Don't you have any shame for ganging up on a single person?" Jiang Yuanlong smiled indifferently. However, his words infuriated all the Sword Sons of the Sword Dynasty. What did he mean by ganging up on a single person? What did he mean by shameless? Previously, when the 3 dynasties attacked the Sword Dynasty, the 4-star lords didn't see it. Yu Shan and Xiao Jun, the 2 Sword Sons, had been exhausted to death, and the 4-star lords didn't see it either. But now, the Sword Dynasty had taken an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and surrounded Zhao Weihuang, and the 4-star lord saw it. Afterwards, they stood on the moral high ground, and believed that the Sword Sons of the Sword Dynasty were shameless for ganging up on Zhao Weihuang. That's easy for you to say. Then did you see when the people of my Sword Dynasty bled and sacrificed themselves? Yi Guqin's eyes were cold. The 3rd of the 4-star lords, Jiang Wangcheng, glanced at the pools of blood on the ground and the corpses of Yu Shan and Xiao Jun. He shrugged slightly. Perhaps it's because they were too weak. It's perfectly normal for the weak to die. His words made Su Ziheo's face sink terrifyingly under his mask. Even his hand that gripped his sword trembled slightly. If it were not for the fact that they were the 4-star lords, Su Ziheo probably would have drawn his sword against them long ago. What Jiang Wangqing meant was that Yu Shan, Xiao Jun, and the others deserved to die. Even if it was a battle of attrition, it was because they were too weak and could not endure it. However, the Sword Sons of the Sword Dynasty had ganged up on Zhao Weihuang, so they were shameless. Let alone the people of the Sword Dynasty. Even the spectating prodigies felt that the words of the four-star lords were inappropriate. What right do you have to point your fingers? Mu Xingzu could not help but call out furiously. Are you talking to us? The second, Jiang Shiyu's face sank slightly. He erupted with his powerful presence, overwhelming the entire place. Only the eldest, Jiang Qingsong, remained silent, but his eyes were cold as well. Crown Prince Xingyang sneered complacently on the side. A conflict like this was exactly what he wanted to see. It would be best if the four-star lords directly took action and destroyed the Sword Dynasty. The smell of gunpowder grew heavier and heavier. A few prodigies also looked at Yi Guqin and the others in surprise. Don't tell me the Sword Sons of the Sword Dynasty really want to fight the four-star lords. Probably not. If they take action, they'll be overestimating themselves. The four-star lords are not the prodigies of an empire. Finally, the eldest of the four-star lords, Jiang Qingsong, glanced at the floating palace in the swamp before looking back at Yi Guqin. I heard that you killed 2 princes and princesses of the Heavenly Star Dynasty? Yi Guqin replied coldly, so what? The news of him killing the princes and princesses of the Heavenly Star Dynasty had already spread far and wide. Yi Guqin did not try to hide anything. The surrounding prodigies were all stunned by Yi Guqin's cold and composed response. There were not many people who dared to treat the prodigies of overlord-level forces like that. Crown Prince Xingyang called out coldly when he saw that. How dare you speak to young Master Jiang like that? Sigh. Jiang Qingsong waved his hand. This matter is neither major nor minor. It's not impossible to resolve. Crown Prince Xingyang's expression changed slightly with that. Were even the four-star lords unwilling to offend Yi Guqin? However, Jiang Qingsong's next words made Crown Prince Xingyang heave a sigh of relief as he sneered. We four-star lords can take the Sword Sons of the Sword Dynasty as our servants. All you need to do is enter the realm of Weakwater to investigate the palace. Jiang Qingsong's tone was indifferent, but there was a sense of arrogance in it. Yi Guqin's face turned cold when he heard that. Make all the Sword Sons of the Sword Dynasty servants? Even the prodigies of Overlord-level forces could not make all the 13 Sword Sons of the Sword Dynasty servants. Not to mention that Jiang Qingsong wanted him to enter the realm of Weakwater to investigate the palace. What kind of place was the realm of Weakwater? It was rumored that it was a dangerous place that could make people sink to the bottom of the water forever. Previously, there was a prodigy who wanted to investigate the palace, but fell into the water halfway and never resurfaced again. Jiang Qingsong's words meant that he wanted to use Yi Guqin as a pawn to explore the way. Chapter 1245. Jiang Qingsong's conditions could be said to be very bad. No one could accept it, let alone Yi Guqin and the others. Isn't this a bit too much? Some of the geniuses whispered, but they didn't dare to speak loudly for fear of being noticed by the four-star monarchs. What's wrong? Do you agree? If you agree, you'll become our servants, and we'll let bygones be bygones. Not only that, you'll be safe in the sacred emperor world. Jiang Qingsong said indifferently. From his tone, it seemed that becoming their servants was a very rare thing. Crown Prince Xingyang fanned the flames. Did you hear that? Jinkui, this is young Master Jiang taking pity on you. Why don't you kneel down and express your gratitude? Crown Prince Xingyang said that on purpose to incite more conflict. He knew Yi Guqin's character well. He was upright and unyielding. It was impossible for him to submit to the four-star monarchs. Yi Guqin glanced coldly at Crown Prince Xingyang. How could he not know what Crown Prince Xingyang was planning? He was just borrowing someone else's knife to kill. In his heart, he had already written Crown Prince Xingyang's name on his kill list. However, even though he knew that Crown Prince Xingyang was deliberately aggravating the conflict, Yi Guqin had no intention of giving in. Crown Prince Xingyang was right about one thing. Yi Guqin would never submit to anyone. However, even if Yi Guqin used his true strength, it would be difficult for him to fight against the four-star monarchs. Unless my divine dwellings can transform and my cultivation level can reach a higher level, it will be difficult for me to fight against the 4 of them. Yi Guqin's eyes flashed. So have you thought it through? Jiang Qingsong said impatiently. I'm sorry. In this world, no one in the past, present, or future can make me submit. You can give up, Yi Guchen said coldly. Are you courting death? Jiang Yuanlong's face darkened. As the 4-star monarchs, no one dared to go against their orders no matter where they were. And Yi Guchen was the only one who dared to oppose them in public. The Sword Dynasty's Jiankui's arrogance is indeed well-deserved. But you should know that a dead man has no arrogance to speak of. Third brother Jiang Wangqing said. You want me to die? Who do you think you are? Yi Guchen sneered. Ignorant ant, you don't know the immensity of heaven. Jiang Yuanlong let out a cold harumph as he extended his hand and pointed his finger forward. The astral true qi condensed into a true qi giant finger and shot towards Yi Guchen. You guys go first. Yi Guchen shouted at Mu Xingzu and the others. Master. Mu Xingzu hesitated. Ling Mayin stepped forward and said, Listen to young Master Dugu. He has the ability to turn danger into safety. If we stay here, we will only be a burden to him. In the hearts of the sword masters, Yi Guchen was the embodiment of invincibility. No matter what danger it was, he could turn it into safety. Mu Xingzu bit her lip and nodded slightly. In the past, Yi Guchen had been able to survive against Di Haotian. Mu Xingzu believed that just 4-star lords were not enough to kill Yi Guchen. If they remained here and were captured by the 4-star lords, they would instead be used to threaten Yi Guchen. With that in mind, Mu Xingzu, Jiang Fengmian, Ling Emoshu, and the other swordmasters directly retreated. Third brother Jiang Wangqing said when he saw this. Should we capture them all? First brother Jiang Qingsong shook his head. There's no need. We just need to keep Jiankui under control. Without a leader, they'll naturally return obediently. Jiang Qingsong had to admit that he was right. As long as they captured Yi Guchen, the other swordmasters would definitely return. On the other side, Yi Guchen was temporarily relieved when he saw Mu Xingzu and the others retreat. As for himself, Yi Guchen knew that although he could not fight against 4 heavens' prides at the same time for the time being, he would not be killed so easily. Yi Guchen clenched one hand into a fist, and the vigorous power of the ancient god surged. He punched out, and a brilliant golden fist light tore through the sky, colliding with the giant finger of vital energy, causing a huge wave to erupt. Yi Guchen wanted to take advantage of the situation and retreat. Want to run? Suppress him. Jiang Qingsong said coldly. Let me. Jiang Yuanlong said. He was slightly embarrassed because his attack was blocked by Yi Guchen. Although it was just a casual finger attack, it was blocked by a person with a shattered divine dwelling. This made Jiang Yuanlong lose face. Jiang Wangqing and Jiang Xiu also stepped left and right, blocking the left and right paths. The only direction Yi Guchen could retreat in was the weak water realm. Fight! Yi Guchen's eyes were resolute. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Moreover, he was going to explore the weak water realm, to find an opportunity that could transform his divine dwelling. Since he was already in such a situation, he might as well fight. Perhaps he might be able to find a way out. Thinking of this, Yi Guchen once again activated the divine movement secret technique. Lightning was entwined under his feet, and his figure, like an aurora lightning, rushed toward the weak water realm. Hey, this body technique. The body technique that Yi Guchen revealed made Jiang Qingsong slightly surprised. It seems that this Jiankui has a lot of secrets, but that's fine, let him explore the way first. Jiang Qingsong smiled faintly. Anyway, his purpose had been achieved. Yi Guchen's figure flashed across the void. As soon as he stepped into the water swamp, he immediately felt an incomparably powerful gravity crushing down. This feeling was as if there was suddenly a mountain on his body. Yi Guchen's figure almost instantly fell down and almost fell into the water. But Yi Guchen's divine movement secret technique was very exquisite. When he was only a few feet away from the water surface, he once again erupted with extreme speed and rose into the air. That was close. Yi Guchen's heart palpitated slightly. He also finally understood why so many heaven's prides had fallen into the water before. This kind of gravity suppression was indeed not something that anyone could withstand. Yi Guchen felt that the surrounding air was as viscous as mercury. and every inch forward consumed a lot of energy. And he was still a long way from the palace. Looking back, the four Jiang brothers did not chase after him again, but stood on the shore, looking at him indifferently like a cat playing with a mouse. Jiang Yuanlong said with a hint of banter, "Jiankui, help us explore the way, don't fall into the water." Yi Guqin did not reply, because to him, there was no need to speak to four people who were destined to die. "No, if this continues, it will be difficult for me to reach the palace." Yi Guqin frowned. The further he advanced, the more the gravity doubled. Even if Yi Guqin summoned the body of an ancient god, it would probably still be difficult for him to advance. That's right, if we're talking about gravity. Yi Guqin suddenly had an idea. His edgeless way of the sword could be used to summon the gravity sword domain, which might be useful. Thinking of this, Yi Guqin directly summoned the gravity sword domain. In the void, there seemed to be a vague ancient divine mountain that appeared, spreading out the gravity sword domain. Yi Guqin used the gravity sword domain in reverse. This way, he could offset the original gravity of the place. Sure enough, after using it, Yi Guqin immediately felt as light as a swallow. With a flash, he shot towards the palace in the center of the realm of weak water with great speed. How is this possible? On the shore, thousands of heaven's prides were stunned. They never thought that Yi Guqin really had the ability to approach the palace. The faces of the four star lords sank at the same time. What method did that kid use? Jiang Yuanlong was slightly embarrassed, feeling like he had been slapped in the face. Don't worry. No matter what fortuitous encounter he obtained in the palace, he'll have to come out in the end. All we need to do is sit here and reap the rewards, Jiang Qingsong said indifferently. Haha, that's right. Big brother, you're the best. No matter how many fortuitous encounters that kid obtained, he'll still end up in our pocket in the end. Jiang Yuanlong laughed very happily. Chapter 1246. The four-star lords had already made up their minds. They waited by the shore. No matter what fortuitous encounter Yi Guqin obtained in the end, they could directly take it from him. Sigh, looks like that Jiankui is in dire straits. The surrounding prodigies secretly shook their heads when they saw the situation. In their eyes, Yi Guqin was a caged beast. No matter how he struggled, he would only benefit the four-star lords in the end. On the other side, Yi Guqin finally set foot in the hall as well. The hall was covered in rust. It was extremely ancient, as if it had been fished out from the bottom of the water. Yi Guqin focused his mind and entered the hall. A cold, moist presence permeated the hall. It was deathly silent, and there was nothing unusual about it. Is there no fortuitous encounter at all? Yi Guqin was doubtful. Right at this moment, his sharp divine sense sensed a dense water attribute aura emanating from the depths of the palace. A gleam of light flashed through Yi Guqin's eyes, and he strode in. The second tribulation he wanted to undergo was the tribulation of water, so he needed fortuitous encounters like this the most. In just a while, Yi Guqin finally arrived at the very depths of the hall. To no surprise, there was a pool of water in the very depths of the hall. It was filled with a viscous liquid that was like mercury. As the water rippled, it seemed like huge waves were crashing against the sky. Is this profound origin heavy water? Yi Guqin's voice was slightly surprised. Mystic origin heavy water was an extremely special and rare liquid. It was rumored that a single droplet of profound origin heavy water could crush a mountain. In the South Domain region, a saint who had grasped the laws of water had once refined a river of profound origin heavy water. As soon as the river appeared, it would wash the sky. Even saints of the same level would be suppressed and heavily injured. They would struggle to resist. It was possible to say that profound origin heavy water was similar to wondrous flames of the world or lightning of the world. It was a powerful force of nature nurtured by the world. Moreover, profound origin heavy water was an excellent forging material. If some profound origin heavy water was added to a god artifact, not only would the quality of the god artifact increase, but it could even increase its weight. Moreover, the weight would not burden the wielder of the god artifact at all. One could imagine how powerful that sword strike would be. It would be akin to a mountain range crashing down. It was also because of these various functions that the rarity of Xianyuan heavy water was even greater than ordinary heaven and earth extraordinary flames and heaven and earth extraordinary lightning. However, this pool of mystic origin heavy water is of little value to me. Yi Guqian frowned. He did not feel any joy. What he cultivated was not a water attribute cultivation technique, nor did he use any water attribute martial arts. What he needed was a secret realm of heaven and earth that could transform his divine dwelling. Just this pool of mystic essence heavy water was clearly still unable to meet the mystic realm's requirements. Of course, if other martial artists knew of Yi Guqian's current state of mind, they would definitely vomit blood. If others could obtain a lump of Xianyuan heavy water, they would be incomparably happy and treat it as a supreme treasure. In the end, a pool of mystic essence heavy water was placed in front of Yi Guqian, but he was somewhat disappointed. Forget it. Even if it can't transform the divine dwelling, this mystic essence heavy water is also a good material for forging. I'll collect it first. Yi Guqian thought as he began to use a special vessel to store the mystic essence heavy water. It was also at this moment that the entire palace suddenly trembled. It was as if a giant had grabbed it with both hands and was shaking it violently. What's going on? Retreat first. Yi Guqian's heart skipped a beat as he felt a great sense of danger. He did not hesitate at all. He was very decisive as he retreated in a flash. Opportunities were important, but compared to one's own life, they were nothing. At this moment, outside the palace, on the shore of the realm of weak water, all the prodigies, including the 4-star lords and Crown Prince Xingyang, saw an extremely shocking scene. Monstrous waves surged in the swamp as a whirlpool spread out. And right in the center of the whirlpool was where the palace was located. At this moment, some sharp-eyed people saw a figure suddenly flash out at the entrance of the palace. It was Yi Guqian. It's Jinkui. He's about to escape. Some prodigies cried out in surprise. Although they did not know what the whirlpool represented, it clearly could not be anything good. However, the moment Yi Guqian stepped out of the palace, at the bottom of the whirlpool, an incomparably huge exotic beast appeared. The exotic beast opened its huge mouth, like a black hole that could devour everything. Under everyone's gaze, the exotic beast opened its huge mouth that seemed to be able to devour a corner of the sky. It directly swallowed the palace and Yi Guqian, who had stepped out of the palace. Boom! The beast closed its mouth, and the exotic beast fell back into the water again, splashing hundreds of feet high. The waves surged in all directions and mist filled the air. On the shore, all the prodigies were stunned. Their eyes were frozen in shock, and their pupils were trembling. What exotic beast is that? What a terrifying aura. It's no weaker than a saint's. Many prodigies were horrified, and cold sweat broke out on their backs. Such a huge palace had been swallowed in a single gulp, and even Yi Guqian had been swallowed. Is that a Kuan beast? Some prodigies were still fearful. No matter what it is, it's an existence we can't afford to provoke. It looks like there won't be any fortuitous encounters in the realm of weak water. Many people sighed. However, some people shook their heads. I never thought that the famous Jian Kuei of the Sword Dynasty, a natural saint, would die in such a way. Yeah, it really makes one sigh. He didn't die in battle, nor did he display his brilliance. Instead, he was inexplicably swallowed by a cosmos beast and perished. Isn't such a way of dying slightly aggrieved, and it isn't worthy of his identity? If people outside the sacred emperor's world noticed this, it would probably cause a huge uproar. Discussions broke out in all directions. Some felt pity, some were watching a show, and some were gloating. The 4-star lords looked at one another. They all felt lingering fear. If they hadn't forced Yi Guqian into the palace and entered it themselves, they would probably be the ones devoured by the exotic beast. That sword leader's luck is really bad. But that's fine. This matter is over. What should we do next? Second brother Jiang Shiyu asked. In his eyes, Yi Guqian's death was not worth mentioning. It's time to deal with him. If he continues to find fortuitous encounters in the sacred emperor's world, it will be bad for us in the future, Jiang Qingsong said coldly. Having made up their minds, the 4 young star lords did not stay any longer. They turned around and left. Crown Prince Xingyang took one last look at the realm of weak water, shook his head, and sneered. Jiankui, this is what you get for going against me. With the departure of the 4 young star lords, the rest of the prodigies also began to scatter. After all, with such a powerful exotic beast in the realm of weak water, no one dared to look for any fortuitous encounters. However, it was not hard to imagine that the news of Yi Guqin's death would spread everywhere. There would be a great shock both inside and outside the sacred emperor's world. Chapter 1247. Outside the Holy Emperor world, the scene in the realm of Ruoshui was reflected in the sky. From the beginning to the end, all the forces of the various dynasties were watching. Wu Hongyan, Qin Fuzi, and the others of the Sword Dynasty were extremely anxious when they saw the Sword Princes being besieged. The experts of the other 3 dynasties were overjoyed. Especially Emperor Qian of the Great Qian Dynasty, who was smiling widely. Then came Yushan and Xiao Jun, who died because of the consecutive battles. This made Wu Hongyan, Qin Fuzi, and the others extremely angry. They felt as if their hearts were bleeding. After all, the death of one of the 13 sword princes meant one less. Then came Yi Guqin's arrival. He swept away all the forces in a domineering manner. Feng Shalai, Zhongshan, and the others all died at the hands of Yi Guqin. This made everyone in the Sword Dynasty breathe a sigh of relief. But the experts of the Tyrant Blade Dynasty and the War God Dynasty looked terrible. But later, the arrival of the 4-star lords made everyone in the Sword Dynasty nervous again. The last scene was that Yi Guqin and the palace were swallowed by the strange beast. Outside the Holy Emperor world, there was an uproar. That is definitely the Kuan. It is said that it is the pet of the Immortality Saint Emperor. Some of the experts who knew a little about it said, I didn't expect that Jiankui of the Sword Dynasty, who is known as a natural saint, would die in such a way. But this is good. After all, Jiankui's spiritual dwellings have been destroyed. He is undoubtedly a cripple. His death may be a good thing for him. Many people from various forces were discussing this matter. On the side of the Sword Dynasty, it was as silent as a pool of stagnant water. How could this be? Wu Hongyan's face was pale. She was unwilling to believe this fact. Yi Guqin was the backbone of the 13 sword princes. It could even be said that he was the faith of many warriors of the Sword Dynasty. After all, Yi Guqin played a major role in the survival of the Sword Dynasty from that war. But now, Yi Guqin was being devoured by the Kuan in front of all the forces outside the Holy Imperial world. This was an iron-like fact that could not be shaken at all. Furthermore, no one believed that Yi Guqin would survive. Why is the heavens treating my Sword Dynasty like this? Qin Fuzi's face was also trembling. First, 2 sword sons had fallen, and then Yi Guqin had fallen. This was a fatal blow to the Sword Dynasty. Everyone from the Sword Dynasty cast their gazes towards the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion. The reason why Yi Guqin had died was because of the pressure from the 4-star lords. Just by relying on his strength and the backing of the Starry Sword Pavilion, he was able to act arrogantly. On the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion's side, many elders of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion were indifferent. As far as they were concerned, it was perfectly normal for something like this to happen. So what if he was being forced? So what if they bullied others with their power? Their Starry Universe Sword Pavilion had the strength and foundation to do so. That was why they could be so domineering. It's just Jiankui's death. It's nothing. I'm looking forward to the performance of the 4-star lords, someone murmured. His body was wrapped in endless starlight. He sat cross-legged in the void, giving off the powerful energy waves of a tribulation saint. If Yi Guqin was here, he would have an impression of this person. It was the 7th-star lord. Earlier on the Tianhuang Plain, the 7th-star lord had sent his projection to try to snatch the God Devourer sword, but he failed in the end. In the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion, only saints above the Tribulation realm were qualified to become the Star Lord. But the 7th-star lord, a Tribulation saint, was only ranked 7th. It could be seen how powerful the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion was as an overlord-level force. There were many strong people in the pavilion. For the 7th-star lord, forcing a genius of a dynasty to die was not a great achievement. Only by killing a genius of an overlord-level force would he be able to show off. Looking at the nonchalant attitude of the strong people of the Starry Universe Sword Pavilion, the people of the Sword Dynasty felt extremely aggrieved. I really hope that someone in the Saint Emperor's world can take action and slaughter the 4-star lords, young Master Xingyun and the others. A cultivator from the Sword Empire whispered resentfully. Of course, that was only what they thought. If nothing unexpected happened, the 4-star lords in Gu Xiaoyang would not be in danger. As for Emperor Qian, Empress Fengnia, and the others, they were in a good mood. When the Sword Sons in the Saint Emperor world heard the news, their minds buzzed. They could not believe it. How can it be? I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Mu Xingzu's body trembled. She could not even stand properly. She sat down on the ground. Her face was extremely pale because of the loss of blood. In her heart, Yi Guqin was an indomitable existence. Even if he died, Yi Guqin would not even frown. No matter the circumstances, he could turn misfortunes into blessings. But now Mu Xingzu and the others heard the news that Yi Guqin had been swallowed by the Kuan beast. No, it's impossible. Mu Xingzu was not the only one who could not accept it. Ling Moyin and Han Lingxian were also pale. They could not accept it. They both had feelings for Yi Guqin. At this moment, they could not accept it. They felt like the sky had fallen. Young Master Dugu will not die. He will not die. Ling Yamoshu also clenched his fists. It was Yi Guqin who had pulled him out of the abyss of being crippled. He did not believe that Yi Guqin would die so easily. I don't want to believe it either. But almost everyone saw it with their own eyes. Jiang Fengmian sighed heavily. It was as if dark clouds were gathering above everyone's heads. On the other side, Jian Jinghong was cultivating in a place of opportunity. He had also heard the news, and was filled with murderous intent. Zhao Weihuang, Crown Prince Xingyang, and the 4 young star lords, just you wait. Jian Jinghong said coldly. Xuanlian, Kong Kong, and the others had also heard the news. They also did not believe it, and were furious. It could be said that the Holy Imperial world would become more and more turbulent. In the outer area, there was a place of opportunity called the Nirvana Pool of Fortune. Yan Wushuang and Ji Ling were both sitting cross-legged within a pool that was filled with dense spiritual energy, and they were cultivating. Dugu Qioma stood outside, frowning slightly. By his side, Chen Qingxiao, who wore green clothes, stood respectfully with his hands by his side, and he seemed like a loyal servant. The original body does not need my help for now. It seems that he is not dead yet, Dugu Qioma murmured. As Yi Guqin's doppelganger, he knew best about Yi Guqin's situation. But now, although Yi Guqin was not dead, he was in a desperate situation. Dugu Qioma wanted to help, but Yi Guqin refused. Forget it. The original body has his own plans. If there is a problem, I will go and check it out, Dugu Qioma thought to himself. Then he looked at the Nirvana Pool of Fortune and shook his head. What a pity. The Nirvana Pool of Fortune is not small, but it is not enough to transform my spiritual dwelling. Dugu Qioma's spiritual dwelling was already a flawless Azura spiritual dwelling. It would be very difficult to transform it into a leakless spiritual dwelling. Although the Nirvana Pool of Fortune was a rare opportunity, it was not enough to improve his spiritual dwelling. But at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared outside the Nirvana Pool of Fortune. It's him. Dugu Qioma looked over. Chapter 1248. The figure who had arrived at the Nirvana Creation Pool was dressed in tiger-patterned black gold battle armor. It was Zhao Weihuang. However, he was in a rather sorry state at the moment. His injuries had yet to fully recover. After escaping from the realm of weak water, Zhao Weihuang had made up his mind. He had heard the news that Dugu Qioma was at the Nirvana Creation Pool, so he had rushed over directly. Zhao Weihuang's plan was to join forces with Dugu Qioma to kill Yi Guqin. Of course, because he had rushed over directly, he still did not know that Yi Guqin had been devoured by the Kuan beast. Most of the geniuses of the War God Empire had been killed by Yi Guqin in the realm of weak water. For example, Zhao Shinkong and Zhao Xiaodi had already begun preparing to enter the inner ring, so they had not received the news. As a result, Zhao Weihuang was cut off from the news. However, at the moment, his eyes were blood-red and burning with anger. In the realm of weak water, he was as miserable as a dog. If he had not been lucky enough to encounter the 4 Star Lords and the others, his life would have been in danger. To Zhao Weihuang, who had always been high and mighty, this was an unerasable humiliation. Not to mention, his father, the Earth War Emperor, had indirectly died at the hands of Yi Guqin. With all kinds of hatred added together, Zhao Weihuang's hatred for Yi Guqin was imaginable. He only had one obsession in his heart, and that was to kill Yi Guqin. Du Guqiuma looked at Zhao Weihuang, whose eyes were red, and frowned. What, Zhao Weihuang, are you here to fight for the Nirvana creation pool? Zhao Weihuang took a deep breath. If it were any other time, he might really be interested in the Nirvana creation pool. But now, he was so angry that all he could think about was killing Yi Guqin. He had heard of Du Guqiuma's strength. He could even suppress the geniuses of the Dragon Phoenix ranking. Zhao Weihuang glanced at Chen Qingxiao, who was beside Du Guqiuma. Not to mention Dugu, Chen Qingxiao alone was enough to make Zhao Weihuang extremely wary. He forced a smile and said, "Of course not. How could I possibly snatch Brother Dugu's opportunity?" "Then why are you here?" Du Guqiuemo asked indifferently. He could indeed kill Zhao Weihuang now, but seeing Zhao Weihuang's attitude, he was not in a hurry. The Mola dynasty suffered heavy losses during the war between the 2 dynasties. Could it be that Brother Dugu doesn't want to take revenge? Zhao Weihuang persuaded patiently. So, Dugu turned his head slightly. "I hope that we can work together to kill Jiankui and the others." Zhao Weihuang stated his purpose. "Oh, but why?" Du Guqiuemo sneered. "Don't you want to take revenge and avenge the Mola dynasty?" Zhao Weihuang was a little surprised. "Haha, Zhao Weihuang, you should know what the people of the Mola dynasty are like. Their lives have nothing to do with me. As long as Jiankui doesn't provoke me, there's no need for me to provoke such an opponent." Du Guqiuemo shook his head and laughed. Zhao Weihuang was speechless. He did not expect Du Guqiuemo to have such an attitude. "But your Princess Luoho's son-in-law, Princess Luoho, has also provoked Jiankui. When the time comes, Jiankui will definitely not let her go." Zhao Weihuang was unwilling to give up. "We'll talk about that when the time comes. In any case, I won't do anything now." Du Guqiuemo waved his hand. He wanted to see what method Zhao Weihuang could still take out to persuade him. Zhao Weihuang clenched his fists. A trace of hesitation flashed through his eyes. However, when he thought of his father's death and the humiliation he had suffered, his eyes surged with determination. He flipped his hand and took out a golden fruit. "This is..." Du Guqiuemo's eyes flashed. "This is the Nirvana fruit. It's a precious opportunity that I found in the outer circle. I originally wanted to keep it for myself in the future. However, if Brother Dugu is willing to join forces with me to deal with Jiankui, I am willing to give the Nirvana fruit to you." Zhao Weihuang's eyes were red and he almost roared. This was the greatest sincerity he could offer. There was no lack of opportunities in the Holy Imperial Realm. However, opportunities like the Nirvana fruit and the Nirvana creation pool that could transform the divine dwelling were very rare. Zhao Weihuang's heart was bleeding when he took out the fruit. However, he was also intoxicated. As long as he could kill Yi Guqin, he would do anything. Du Guqiuemo's lips curled into a faint smile. Was this the so-called giving a pillow when you are sleepy? A Nirvana creation pool could not transform his flawless Azura divine dwelling. However, what if he added the Nirvana fruit? Perhaps there was a possibility of transformation. At least he could give it a try. "I am not a pretentious person. Since you can offer such sincerity, I will reluctantly accept it." Du Guqiuemo took the Nirvana fruit. Hearing the words reluctantly, Zhao Weihuang's eyes twitched. He wanted to curse? To be able to get such a rare item like the Nirvana fruit, how could he say reluctantly? If not for the fact that Du Guqiuemo was very strong, Zhao Weihuang would have punched him. However, Zhao Weihuang took a deep breath and said, "There is no time to lose. Let's go to the realm of weak water and kill Jiankui." Zhao Weihuang could not wait any longer. A strange look flashed across Du Guqiuemo's eyes. Yi Guqin was still trapped in the Kuan beast's body. If he went there directly, wouldn't he be exposed? After obtaining the Nirvana fruit, Duguqiu Emo was not in a hurry to kill Zhao Weihuang. As the saying goes, kill the heart. He wanted to let Zhao Weihuang die in endless pain and regret. If Zhao Weihuang were to find out that the nirvana fruit that he had given to Yi Guqin ended up benefiting Yi Guqin, how would he react? Therefore Duguqiu Emo said, I can't do it now. I need to increase my strength and seek a breakthrough. This. Zhao Weihuang's expression changed slightly. He did not want to wait so long. Duguqiu Emo said indifferently, Don't worry, I don't need much time to break through. Moreover, my strength will increase greatly after the breakthrough. And I can guarantee that I can kill that Jian Kuei. If I go now, if Jian Jinghong and the rest return, it will be troublesome. Zhao Weihuang thought about it. It was the same. If Jian Jinghong, Xuanlian and the rest returned, even with Duguqiu Emo and Chen Qingxiao, they might not be able to kill Yi Guqin. Well, then I'll leave it to Brother Dugu. I'll wait here. Zhao Weihuang cupped his hands. You can rest assured, Duguqiu Emo said. He then sat cross-legged in the nirvana fortune pool with the nirvana fruit in his hand, ready to start cultivating and find an opportunity to transform his divine dwelling. Zhao Weihuang stood guard at the side. Duguqiu Emo was not worried that Zhao Weihuang would do anything to him. Not to mention that Zhao Weihuang was begging him now. There was also Chen Qingxiao, his servant, at the side. If Zhao Weihuang made any moves, Chen Qingxiao would immediately stop him. Zhao Weihuang, you're the one who's working for someone else's disciple. I'm looking forward to seeing your face when you finally find out the truth. Duguqiu Emo sneered inwardly, then sank into cultivation. Chapter 1249. In the depths of the weak water realm. In a dark place, Yi Guqin's body was immersed in water. This water was no ordinary water. It was all profound origin heavy water. A drop of Xianyuan heavy water was enough to crush a mountain peak. And Yi Guqin was surrounded by Xianyuan heavy water, which showed how terrifying the pressure was. If it were other heavens' prides, if their physical body was not strong enough, they would immediately be crushed into a bloody pulp by the Xianyuan heavy water. Yi Guqin was different. From the beginning of cultivation, Yi Guqin had tempered his physical body with the muscle tendon changing scripture, and then cultivated the marrow cleansing scripture. Finally, the two combined to cultivate the invincible Vajra body, which then transformed into the flawless Vajra body. In addition, Yi Guqin cultivated the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra, which transformed his physical body into a perfect one. Then he cultivated the ancient god tactics of the ancient god clan, which allowed his body to transform into the ancient god form. All these factors added together made Yi Guqin's physical body extremely terrifying. He was almost invincible in the same realm, and no other heaven's prides could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Therefore, Yi Guqin was immersed in the Xianyuan heavy water, and did not directly burst into a bloody pulp. But even so, Yi Guqin felt endless pressure crushing down on him, as if his blood vessels were about to explode. Ancient god tactics. Without the slightest hesitation, Yi Guqin directly transformed into the ancient god form. His body skyrocketed to 9 feet, and his whole body was filled with ancient light patterns. 2 ancient god stars appeared between his eyebrows, declaring Yi Guqin's identity as a 2-star ancient god. After summoning the ancient god body, Yi Guqin's situation only slowed down a little, but he was not completely out of danger, because the Xianyuan heavy water was too terrifying. It completely submerged him, like countless mountains pressing down on his body, and the surface of his skin was faintly covered with blood-red cracks. Boom! Yi Guqin once again erupted his divine dwelling qi. At this moment, there was no need to hide anything, and all his moves were displayed together. The violent qi attached to Yi Guqin's body surface, sharing part of the pressure. However, it only slowed down a little. Without hesitation, Yi Guqin once again summoned the ancient god clan's unique skill, the ancient god's immovable king armor. The ancient god power on his body surface flowed, condensing into a golden armor. It was the immovable ancient god armor. After summoning the king armor, Yi Guqin could finally breathe a sigh of relief. At least for a short period of time, his life was not in danger. But over time it was hard to say. It was during this time that Yi Guqin could think about the current situation. Am I inside the body of that strange beast? Yi Guqin muttered to himself. Everything that had happened was too sudden. Even Yi Guqin did not have time to react. However, before he was devoured, he caught a glimpse of the exotic beast's huge head. Was it? Was it? Was to be? The Kuan beast was an extremely ancient and powerful group of demonic beasts with different branches and characteristics. But in the Nantian region, and even the 9 regions, Kuan beasts were rare. Yi Guqin did not expect such an ancient beast to exist in the Holy Emperor realm. Could it be that this Kuan beast is related to the immortal Saint Emperor? He placed the Kuan beast in his small world. Perhaps it is also a kind of protector. Yi Guqin guessed. He felt that it was very possible. But the most important thing now was not to find out the origin of Kuan. It was to find a way out of this hopeless situation. Yi Guqin could only hold on for a short period of time. After a long period of time, he would still be crushed into a pulp by the Xianyuan heavy water. Yi Guqin smiled bitterly. Who would have thought that Xianyuan heavy water was inside the Kuan's body? I thought there was too little Xianyuan heavy water in the palace. But then his eyes became bright and resplendent. Yes, this Kuan must have mastered the law of water. Otherwise, there would not be so much Xianyuan heavy water in its body. This is the Kuan's attack method. Yi Guqin analyzed carefully. There were many branches of Kuan. There was Corpse Kuan that mastered the law of death, Rock Kuan that mastered the law of earth, and Void Kuan that mastered the law of the void. It was even rumored that there was a Star Kuan that could swallow stars. Even though this Kuan was not as powerful as the Star Kuan or Void Kuan, it was at least an 8th-ranked demon emperor. A 7th-ranked demon emperor was called the King of Demons, and was comparable to a human false saint. On the other hand, rank 8 demonic beasts were known as demonic emperors. Their strength was comparable to human heavenly tribulation saints. Furthermore, demon beasts were more powerful than humans at the same level. Therefore, this Kuan must be extremely powerful. Ordinary heaven's tribulation saints would not be able to resist it. This Kuan should be a Corpse Kuan that mastered the law of water. Logically speaking, if I am swallowed by it, I will only be waiting for death. There is no way out. But Yi Guqin's eyes lit up. This was his personality. Even if there was no way out, he would not give up. Yi Guqin still had many things to do. He had yet to settle his karma with Gu Xiaoyang, take revenge on Huang Qianqiu for destroying his divine residence, and kill his mortal enemy, Di Haotian. He still had to save Su Jianshi and destroy the Celestial God Sword Sect, Starry Sword Pavilion, Dongfang family, and other forces. Therefore, Yi Guqin could not die. If I want to pass the water tribulation, I need a water attribute mystic realm of heaven and earth. However, this Corpse Kuan's body also has a type of mystic realm of heaven and earth. Moreover, it is an excellent mystic realm of heaven and earth. Yi Guqin's eyes lit up. A so-called mystic realm of heaven and earth was not necessarily a location. For example, this Corpse Kuan's body was an excellent mystic realm. Cultivating the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra is my only hope for survival. I, Yi Guqin, will not be defeated. Yi Guqin's eyes seemed to be burning with flames. His blood seemed to be boiling. This was a desperate situation, but it was also hope. He had not given up on his life. Boom. Without hesitation, Yi Guqin activated the power of the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra, and began to pass the second of the 4 tribulations of poverty, the water tribulation. The moment he activated the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra, the immovable king armor on the surface of his body could not bear the burden, and shattered with a loud bang. His true energy shield was also shattered. Endless mystic origin heavy water crushed toward Yi Guqin. But at the same time, a strange power filled Yi Guqin's body. His divine dwelling shone brightly. This was the power of the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra. It guided the power of the mystic origin heavy water to refine Yi Guqin's divine dwellings. This was a painful and long process. Yi Guqin felt as if every inch of his skin was being hammered and crushed by an iron hammer. Soon, his blood vessels could not bear the pressure and shattered. His entire skin turned the color of blood. As if he was a man of blood. The surface of his skin cracked. and his entire body seemed to be about to explode. This was an inhuman pain. It was as if someone was repeatedly crushed on a stone mill. Ordinary people definitely could not bear this kind of pain. Yi Guchen gritted his teeth and did not make a sound. He took out 2 more nirvana pills and swallowed them into his stomach to assist in the transformation. Every tribulation of the 9 tribulations Heart Sutra was related to life and death. Of course, if he could pass it, his strength would also skyrocket and reach a new level. I must pass the 4 tribulations of poverty. I must transform my divine dwellings to the extreme and lay a perfect foundation. Only then can I break through to the Sky Palace Supremacy realm. Yi Guchen's eyes were determined. This was his goal. Chapter 1250. There was no light in the Dukuan's body. Only Yi Guchen, who was sitting cross-legged, emitted light, like a star in the dark night. That was the spiritual dwelling in his body, which was shining. After being washed by the power of the Xianyuan heavy water, it seemed to have undergone a strange transformation. As for Yi Guchen, he seemed to have become a man of blood, sitting cross-legged in the Xianyuan heavy water like a blood-colored statue. If not for his heartbeat, one would think that he was a dead man. Yi Guchen was immersed in the heavenly tribulation, and did not notice that a blue-robed figure had appeared not far away. Haha, interesting. It has been a long time since I met such an interesting person. The blue-robed figure smiled meaningfully. The Xianyuan heavy water around him did not seem to have any effect on him. Time passed inside the Dukuan's body. Yi Guchen seemed to have turned into a blood cocoon, waiting for the moment of nirvana to arrive. In the Holy Imperial Universe, battles were still going on. Geniuses from all walks of life competed for all kinds of opportunities. Some dark horses rose against the trend, while some famous geniuses turned into skeletons. As for Yi Guchen, the name of Jiankui, with his death, no one mentioned it again. As the saying went, the winner takes all. People would not remember the geniuses who failed and died. They would only remember the geniuses who were high and mighty and shone brightly. Only Jian Jinghong, Xuanlian, and the other geniuses of the Sword Dynasty, such as the War God, Mo Luo, and the Badao dynasty would have conflicts from time to time, as they wanted to avenge Yi Guchen. Over at the Nirvana creation pool, at a certain moment, Dugu Qioma, who was sitting cross-legged in the pool, trembled. Endless blood-colored light surged out from his body. One could vaguely see a blood-colored spiritual dwelling, which was emitting an ominous blood-colored light, spinning inside Dugu Qioma's body. An even more terrifying Azura vital chi surged out from Dugu Qioma's body. Rumble. Dugu Qioma was like a demon god descending to the world. A demon king coming out of seclusion. Endless blood-colored light dyed the sky red. Such an imposing manner. Zhao Weihuang, who was watching from a distance, took a deep breath. Even though he was incomparably arrogant and believed that he would not lose to anyone, when he saw the momentum of Dugu's breakthrough, he still felt a sense of shock. The scene of such a breakthrough was too terrifying. It was as if a demon king had awakened. The entire Nirvana fortune pool exploded. Fortunately, Yan Wushuang and Ji Ling had already completed the transformation of their divine dwellings. Otherwise, they would definitely have been affected. This aura is too strong. Ji Ling's beautiful eyes widened when she saw this. She and Yan Wushuang had successfully transformed together, and their strength had increased greatly. They were considered first-rate geniuses in the dynasty. However, at this moment, Ji Ling and Yan Wushuang still felt extremely pressured when facing Dugu's request. This meant that Dugu Qiomo's strength had far surpassed the ranks of the dynasty's sky prides. He could compete with the sky prides of the top overlord forces. Boom. A powerful aura spread out from Dugu Qiomo's body. Finally, I've succeeded. Dugu Qiemo muttered to himself. His blood-colored Azura divine dwelling had finally transformed from a flawless divine dwelling to a leakless divine dwelling. Originally, it would have been difficult for Dugu Qiemo to successfully transform just by relying on the Nirvana fortune pool. However, because of the Nirvana fruit that Zhao Weihuang gave him, the two opportunities were stacked together, allowing Dugu Qioma to successfully transform. Now that his divine dwelling had transformed into a leakless divine dwelling, It was even more powerful and his true qi was 10 times more vigorous. Not only that, but the leakless divine dwelling also meant that when Duguqio cultivated in the future, he would be able to absorb the spiritual qi perfectly without any loss. It could be said that the leakless divine dwelling had laid the most solid foundation for cultivation. For ordinary sky prides, the leakless divine dwelling was already the top divine dwelling. As for the legendary 4th grade world divine dwelling, it was already a legend. At least in the current 9 regions, it was almost extinct. Not many sky prides had been able to cultivate it to the world divine dwelling level. My original body cultivates the 9 tribulations Heart Sutra, so he might be able to create the legendary world divine dwelling level. It's difficult for me, but the leakless divine dwelling is already considered perfect, Duguqio thought to himself. Duguqio was already very satisfied that his divine dwelling had transformed to the 3rd grade. Moreover, the transformation of his divine dwelling had caused his cultivation to rise by 2 minor realms. He had risen from the 3rd to the 5th level of the divine dwelling level. More importantly, with Duguqio's strength at the 5th level of the divine dwelling level, he could finally begin to use the 7 limits of the Spirit Devourer clan's strongest martial art. Duguqio was looking forward to seeing how powerful this martial art would be. At this moment, Zhao Weihuang stepped forward. There was still some lingering fear in his eyes. He cupped his hands at Duguqio and said, "Congratulations to Brother Dugu for successfully transforming. Your strength has increased greatly." While saying this, Zhao Weihuang's heart was dripping blood. It could be said that half of the reason why Duguqio was able to transform successfully was because of the nirvana fruit he had given him. But the only thing that comforted Zhao Weihuang was that Duguqio's strength had increased greatly, and he was more confident in dealing with Yi Guqin. "This is all thanks to you," Duguqio said. "Don't mention it," Zhao Weihuang said politely. However, he didn't notice that when Duguqio said this, there was a flash of cold mockery in the bottom of his eyes. "Then Brother Duguqio should go to the weak water realm to kill Jinkui, right?" Zhao Weihuang said somewhat impatiently. Hearing this, Yin Wushuang and Ji Ling's expressions changed slightly, but they didn't say anything. They believed that Duguqio would make his own choice. A dark light flashed in Duguqio's eyes, and he said coolly, "Sure." Zhao Weihuang's eyes revealed joy as he said, "That's good. Brother Duguqio will set off right away. But when the time comes, don't kill him easily. Enslave him first. Only this way can I torture him to vent my hatred." Zhao Weihuang had a cruel look on his face. It was as if he had already seen the enslaved Yi Guqin Xiao struggling at death's door under his feet, wailing in pain. "Heh." Duguqio did not say anything, the bottom of his eyes icy cold. Very soon, Zhao Weihuang could experience that feeling of falling from heaven to hell. Weak water realm, inside the Yongkuan's body. Yi Guqin Xiao was like a blood-colored sculpture. Blood condensed into a blood scab on the surface of his body. His divine abode transformation had already reached the final juncture. And now, that mystic essence heavy water was already unable to pose any threat to Yi Guqin Xiao. At this moment, at his dantian, Yi Guqin divine abode seemed to be located above a lake. That lake was shockingly composed of mystic essence heavy water, and the divine abode itself also suffused with an azure blue luster. Previously, when Yi Guqin transcended the earth tribulation, the divine abode suffused an earth yellow color like the earth. It was equivalent to that now. Yi Guqin's divine abode already absorbed earth and water, these two kinds of attribute power. Yi Guqin borrowed the mystic essence heavy water to transcend the tribulation and transform. The power of mystic essence heavy water was naturally also absorbed by him. Hence, currently the mystic essence heavy water was no different from ordinary water to Yi Guqin Xiao. But to others, it was still a strange water that weighed as heavy as 30,000 caddies. At some point, Yi Guqin Xiao suddenly opened both eyes. The blood scab on the surface of his body was covered in cracks, then shattered with a loud bang. The surrounding mystic essence heavy water was even blasted away, temporarily forming a vacuum zone. A powerful aura swept across all directions. Chapter 1251. Yi Guchen felt that the spiritual dwelling in his dantian was like the awakening of a dormant true dragon. An incomparably powerful and vigorous aura burst forth from the spiritual dwelling. The eruption of true qi far exceeded the true qi of the flawless divine dwelling, and reached an extremely terrifying level. Yi Guchen couldn't help but roar. The surrounding Xianyuan heavy water exploded, and a roar reverberated in all directions. Yi Guchen's aura also soared like a geyser. His strength had broken through from the second layer of the divine dwelling to the fourth layer of the divine dwelling in a short period of time. Although it was only a breakthrough of 2 small levels, it wasn't easy for the divine dwelling stage to break through to the next level. Moreover, the most important thing for Yi Guchen this time wasn't the breakthrough in cultivation level. Instead, it was his divine dwelling that had completely transformed into the leakless divine dwelling. At this moment, if one observed the divine dwelling in Yi Guchen's dantian, they would discover that it was surrounded by Xianyuan heavy water. This divine dwelling was surrounded by mysterious Yuan heavy water. The surface of the entire divine dwelling was alternately shining with an earthy yellow and azure luster. The power of the earth and water attributes had been completely integrated into the divine dwelling. Next, he only needed to integrate the power of the fire and wind attributes to completely transform the leakless divine dwelling into a world divine dwelling. Yi Guchen felt the power erupting from the divine dwelling in his body, and couldn't help but exclaim, "Interesting. The power of the leakless divine dwelling is indeed far superior to that of a flawless divine dwelling. The amount of true qi is more than 10 times greater than before. Although I only have the strength of the 4th layer of the divine dwelling, in terms of true qi, I'm not inferior to Huang Qianqiu and the other 8th layer heaven prides." The quality of the divine dwelling had a great impact on the strength of a divine dwelling expert. If a 9th layer divine dwelling expert's divine dwelling was only at the leakless level, the amount of true qi in the divine dwelling expert's divine dwelling might not even be comparable to that of a flawless 6th layer divine dwelling expert. Huang Qianqiu's divine dwelling was already very good. It was a flawless divine dwelling. However, Yi Guchen had now transformed into the leakless divine dwelling. Moreover, Yi Guchen also discovered another benefit of the leakless divine dwelling. It meant that when he absorbed the surrounding spiritual qi of heaven and earth, he would not suffer any loss and could completely refine and absorb it. This meant that in the future, whether Yi Guchen cultivated or took pills, all sorts of energy would be completely locked within his body and not wasted. This was also the reason why the leakless divine palace was called leakless. In addition, Yi Guchen also discovered a pleasant surprise. His divine dwellings could absorb and store mystic origin heavy water. Absorb. Yi Guchen activated the power of his divine dwelling. In an instant, the surrounding mystic origin heavy water was sucked into the divine dwellings like rivers returning to the sea. Of course, the profound essence heavy water within this Yongkuan's body was as vast as the sea. It was impossible for Yi Guchen to completely absorb it. But at the very least he could absorb a long river of mystic origin heavy water. At that time, whether it was refined into an offensive technique or used for smithing and equipment refining, it would be excellent. The only thing that gave Yi Guchen a headache was that he could not find a way to leave Yukuan's body for the time being. If he could not leave, even if he succeeded in breaking through, it would be useless. However, Yi Guchen was not too flustered either. Instead, he kept absorbing the mystic origin heavy water. After absorbing the mystic origin heavy water, Yi Guchen possessed 3 types of offensive techniques: Nirvana Heart Demon Flame, 9-colored mystic lightning, and mystic origin heavy water. However, just as Yi Guchen was absorbing the mystic origin heavy water, he suddenly developed a feeling of uneasiness at his back, as if someone was watching him in the dark. Yi Guchen suddenly turned around, his gaze fixed behind him. A blue-robed figure let out a surprised voice. Have I been discovered? Your divine soul perception is quite sharp." "You are." Yi Guchen's gaze converged. That was a man wearing a cloud-patterned blue robe. His long dark blue hair swayed in the mystic origin heavy water. His facial features were deep, and his appearance was handsome. His eyes were also sky blue, as unfathomable as the sea. Looking at this man, Yi Guchen's expression was vigilant. He could sense this man's might. Consciousness doppelganger, you are. Yi Guchen's brows were tightly locked. Such a strange consciousness doppelganger appearing in Yu Kuan's body. If it were anyone, they would be vigilant in their hearts. Absorbing the mystic origin heavy water in my body. You're really not courteous at all. The blue-robed man smiled faintly. When Yi Guchen heard that, his gaze shook as he said, "You're this Yu Kuan?" When the blue-robed man appeared, although Yi Guchen had some guesses, he was also not sure. But now, without a doubt, this blue-robed man was precisely this Yu Kuan's consciousness. "I'm the Northern Nether King Bei Miao," the blue-robed man called Bei Miao said. "Northern Nether King." Yi Guchen murmured. Northern Nether had a fish called Kuan. This Bei Miao was undoubtedly this Yu Kuan. "After swallowing you into my body, originally you would have died at the first moment, but I didn't expect that you actually survived and even used the environment to cultivate and break through. Interesting, it's been a long time since I've met such an interesting fellow like you. It makes me a little reluctant to kill you." Bei Miao had his hands behind his back, his pair of blue eyes flickering with a faint luster. However, the words he said made Yi Guchen's heart tremble. This Bei Miao was definitely not a kind person. At least, his attitude towards Yi Guchen was more like he had encountered something interesting and wanted to play with it. Yi Guchen took a deep breath and said, "Northern Nether King, can you let me out? I'll definitely repay you generously in the future." That was all Yi Guchen could say. Now that he had transformed, although his strength had skyrocketed, compared to a rank 8 demon emperor like Bei Miao, there was still a huge gap. Not to mention that at the same level, even a heavenly tribulation saint was not necessarily Bei Miao's match. Haha. How is that possible? I've been staying in the sacred emperor world for so many years, guarding the world for my master. It's really too boring and too boring. Since you can survive in my body, you can stay here until you die. Bei Miao smiled faintly. Yi Guchen furrowed his brows when he heard what he said. What if I say no? Yi Guchen asked in a low voice. Then die, Bei Miao said indifferently. He was a rank 8 demon emperor, and the rarest Kuan beast among the demon beast race, comparable to the true dragon and phoenix. This origin gave Bei Miao the qualifications to look down on all living beings. Except for the sacred emperor master who had subdued him, Bei Miao would hardly care about anyone else, let alone be moved by the will of others. As for Yi Guchen, a divine dwelling stage expert was no different from an ant in Bei Miao's eyes. Would you consider the request of an ant? Of course not. This was the current status of Yi Guchen and Bei Miao. Yi Guchen pondered. It was impossible for him to stay here forever. He still had a lot of things to do, and many grievances to settle. While the situation was in a deadlock, Yi Guchen suddenly had a flash of inspiration. His eyes lit up as he thought of a possibility. Perhaps this is a way. Yi Guchen thought. Chapter 1252. He looked at the motionless Yi Guchen, whose face was as grave as a statue. Bei Miao tilted his head slightly and said, "Don't just stand there. I don't need a boring ant." It wasn't easy to find an ant that could survive in his body. Bei Miao didn't want to lose the fun. After all, it had been a long time since he had spoken so much with someone. Even the Kuan beast would go crazy if it was bored to the extreme. Yi Guchen came back to his senses as a faint luster flashed through his eyes. He then said, "Perhaps there is a slight chance that I can leave." "Oh." Bei Miao smiled faintly and continued. "You are in my body. If I don't agree, how can you leave?" In Bei Miao's opinion, Yi Guchen's words were extremely laughable. Yi Guchen didn't say anything else. He swiped his hand across his origin ring and took out an item. "Do you recognize this?" Yi Guchen opened his palm. A golden lotus seed lay quietly in the center of his palm. This golden lotus seed was the special reward Yi Guchen had received after the holy lotus sprouted 50 leaves. Yi Guchen had never been able to figure out the use of the golden lotus seed. However, he guessed that this golden lotus seed must have some connection with the immortal Saint Emperor, because the holy lotus had appeared together with the holy emperor world. When Bei Miao's gaze landed on the golden lotus seed, the carefree smile on his face disappeared. His blue eyes were filled with astonishment. With a whoosh, Bei Miao's figure landed directly in front of Yi Guqin. He looked at the golden lotus seed, and then stared at Yi Guqin. How did you get this? Seeing Bei Miao's reaction, Yi Guqin's heart settled. His guess was right. As a special reward, the value of this golden lotus seed didn't lie in the lotus seed itself, but in the meaning behind it. I triggered 50 leaves of the holy lotus. This is my reward, Yi Guqin said honestly. You triggered 50 leaves of the holy lotus? Bei Miao sized up Yi Guqin. His deep blue eyes revealed a scrutinizing gaze. Dark North King, what is the special meaning of this golden lotus seed? Yi Guqin asked. He guessed that with this golden lotus seed in his possession, Bei Miao would probably not do anything harmful to him. Bei Miao looked at Yi Guqin and suddenly laughed. He wasn't the only one smiling. Yi Guqin felt as if the surrounding space was vibrating. Bei Miao's true form, the Yongkuan, also seemed to be trembling in excitement. This made Yi Guqin reveal a look of surprise. After venting his emotions, Bei Miao calmed his mind, and then he sized up Yi Guqin with a slightly complicated gaze. I didn't expect you to be the one most likely to obtain Master's fortune, Bei Miao said. Yi Guqin's eyes lit up. Hearing the meaning in Bei Miao's words, this golden lotus seed was actually related to the immortal Saint Emperor's inheritance. That was neither a sage's legacy, nor a sage monarch's legacy. It was the real sage emperor's legacy. If the news of the golden lotus seed spread, all the prodigies in the sacred emperor realm would probably go crazy and fight for it. Bei Miao continued. Of course, having the golden lotus seed only means that you are qualified to obtain Master's legacy. As for whether you can obtain it in the end, you still have to go through various tests. However, without the lotus seed, there is no chance at all. Yi Guqin sighed slightly. The immortal Saint Emperor valued his legacy very much. One had to have 50 leaves to be qualified to obtain his legacy. One had to know that even a natural genius like Di Haotian was only one leaf away from the perfect 50 leaves. As for Yi Guqin, if it weren't for his various trump cards and his special and mysterious bloodline, he wouldn't have been able to obtain the golden lotus seed. I'm happy because if someone can obtain Master's legacy, I can leave the sacred emperor realm and regain my freedom, Bei Miao said. I see. Yi Guqin nodded slightly. He finally understood why Bei Miao was so happy just now. Anyone who had been trapped in a place for countless years would be overjoyed to be able to regain their freedom. There is one more thing. If you can obtain Master's legacy, you will be my new master, Bei Miao said with a complicated tone. Yi Guqin raised his eyebrows slightly. If he obtained Master's legacy, he would become Lord Bei Ming's master? This was no small matter. Bei Miao was an 8th-rank monster emperor, and his original form was a rare and powerful rock. He could control the law of water, and the Xianyuan heavy water. His combat strength was off the charts. Regular saints in the tribulation were no match for Bei Miao. If Bei Miao used the power of the rock, even the Saint Kings would have to treat him with caution. It could be said that if he could obtain Lord Bei Ming's loyalty, it would be a great help to Yi Guqin. In the future, Yi Guqin was destined to fight against the Celestial Sword Sect, Starry Sword Pavilion and other forces. The Sword Dynasty had experts like the proud Divine Land, but they were far from being comparable to the Celestial Sword Sect. If he could obtain Bei Miao's help, it would also be a great force. Yi Guqin instantly made up his mind to obtain Master's legacy and obtain Bei Miao's loyalty. As if seeing the determination in Yi Guqin's eyes, Bei Miao shook his head and said, Master's legacy is not so easy to obtain. You obtained the golden lotus seed, but it only means that you are qualified. Moreover, even if you obtain Master's legacy, I can't immediately submit to you because your cultivation level is too low and your strength is too weak. It is possible in the future. But of course, I will give you some help for the sake of Master's legacy. As for how much you can grow in the future, that will depend on you. Yi Guqin did not mind Bei Miao's words. He did not expect Bei Miao to immediately submit to him and become his servant after he obtained Master's legacy. As long as he was willing to help, it was enough for Yi Guqin. Moreover, Yi Guqin also believed that he would definitely possess the strength to make Bei Miao willingly submit to him in the future. Can you let me out now? Yi Guchen said. Of course. I still hope that you can obtain Master's legacy and then set me free, Bei Miao said. Yi Guchen nodded and said, don't worry, you will definitely obtain your freedom. The hidden meaning of these words was that Yi Guchen was confident that he would definitely be able to obtain Master's legacy. I'll wait and see. Bei Miao smiled. Yi Guchen had already absorbed enough mystic origin heavy water, so there was no need to stay here. The Baikuan opened its enormous mouth. Yi Guchen cupped his hands slightly towards Bei Miao, and then left. Can you obtain Master's legacy? Bei Miao muttered to himself, his figure like water ripples, and then disappeared. At the same time, outside the weak water realm, Zhao Weihuang, Dugu, Qiuma, Chen Qingxiao, Jiling, Yan Wushuang, and the others had all arrived here. Where is he? Why is everyone gone? Zhao Weihuang's gaze swept the surroundings, his expression ugly. Dugu Qiumo revealed a strange look, sensing Yi Guchen's state. Damn it, looks like that Jiankui has already left. Brother Dugu, let's go to other places to search for his traces, Zhao Weihuang said. No need, he's right here, Dugu Qiumo said. What? Zhao Weihuang was a little confused for a moment. And right at this moment, a whirlpool suddenly appeared on the surface of the water. And then the water exploded. A figure rushed out of the water and stood high in the sky. It was Yi Guchen. Chapter 1253. Yi Guchen, dressed in a black robe and wearing a ghost mask, rushed out from the bottom of the water. Although he hadn't stayed in Du Kuan's body for a long time, he felt as if a lifetime had passed. The current him was completely different from the previous him. His combat strength couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. Most importantly, Yi Guchen didn't have to hide anything anymore. Not only had his cultivation reached the 4th level of the divine dwelling realm, but his divine dwelling had also transformed into the leakless divine dwelling. It could be said that Yi Guchen didn't have to face the 4-star lords, Gu Xiaoyang, and the others. He wasn't even afraid of Chu Xuanjin, Huang Qianqiu, and the other top geniuses. Therefore, Yi Guchen didn't have to hide anything anymore. Next, he would unleash his full strength and sweep through the sacred emperor world. However, at this moment, a sneer suddenly sounded. Haha, Jiankui, it seems that even the heavens don't want you to live. Yi Guchen looked over and saw a group of people standing on the shore. Zhao Weihuang, Dugu Qiuma, Chen Qingxiao, Yan Wushuang, Jiling, and the others. At this moment, Yan Wushuang and Jiling looked a little nervous, because they knew that Zhao Weihuang and Dugu Qiuma were here to deal with Jiankui. As for Yan Wushuang, her pair of sparkling and beautiful eyes were fixed on Yi Guchen without moving. That familiar feeling was getting stronger and stronger. It made her feel both hopeful and fearful. What if she guessed wrong? What if he wasn't the person she thought about day and night? Yan Wushuang was so nervous that she didn't dare to face it. However, her and Jiling's worries were unquestionable. As for Dugu Qiuma, he looked at Yi Guchen with a faint smile. It seems that the original body has also successfully transformed. As for Zhao Weihuang, he didn't realize that he had completely stepped into a trap. It was a desperate trap that Yi Guchen and Dugu had meticulously prepared for him. I just happened to be lacking a punching bag. I didn't expect you to deliver yourself to me. Yi Guchen looked at Zhao Weihuang coldly. Zhao Weihuang was already a target that he had to eliminate. Since he was in such a hurry to die, Yi Guchen could only fulfill his wish. Moreover, he could also use it to test his own strength. When Zhao Weihuang heard Yi Guchen's words, he couldn't help but laugh. What a joke. Jiankui, don't you know your current situation? You're a cripple. Not to mention that Brother Dugu is here. Even I alone am sufficient to kill you 1,000 times over. What qualifications do you have to spout nonsense here? Zhao Weihuang was very confident that he could kill Yi Guchen. Oh, is that so? Yi Guchen's eyes flashed with confusion. Then he clenched his fist and the 9-dragon thunder prison sword appeared in his hand. Seeing this, Zhao Weihuang flipped his hand and took out the tiger head clear golden spear. With a bone-deep ferocity in his eyes, he said, "Today, I will take back the life of my father, the Earth War Emperor, and the humiliation that I have suffered before." Zhao Weihuang stomped his foot on the ground and the earth shook. He shot towards Yi Guchen like a cannonball. In his opinion, if it was only Yi Guchen alone, there was no need for Dugu to ask the demons to help. He could easily crush Yi Guchen. Seeing the tip of Zhao Weihuang's spear, Yi Guchen held the 9-dragon thunder prison sword in his hand and looked extremely calm. Are you stupid? Seeing that Yi Guchen was completely unguarded, Zhao Weihuang thought that Yi Guchen was scared silly. I am pitying you. Yi Guchen shook his head lightly. Then, an extremely terrifying aura exploded from his energy center, as if it had turned into a storm that pierced through heaven and earth. In this storm, Yi Guchen was the core of the storm. This is true energy. Zhao Weihuang was completely dumbfounded and thought that he was hallucinating. Everyone knew that Yi Guchen's spiritual dwelling had been destroyed by Huang Qianqiu. It was also because of this that many people thought that Yi Guchen was a soft persimmon that could be bullied at will. Even the reputation of the Sword Dynasty had been reduced because of this. But now, when he saw Yi Guchen standing in the middle of the storm of true energy, Zhao Weihuang thought that he was hallucinating. No. Impossible. How can someone whose spiritual dwelling has been destroyed have true energy? You are deliberately mystifying things. Zhao Weihuang did not believe it, and thought that Yi Guchen had used some kind of illusory secret skill. Berserk Demon Spear Art, Berserk Demon Eruption. Zhao Weihuang's spear shot out like a dragon, and the true energy of the 6th layer of the divine dwelling completely erupted. However, his true energy of the 6th layer of the divine dwelling was unable to suppress Yi Guchen's true energy of the 4th layer of the divine dwelling. You are too ignorant, Yi Guchen said coldly. Holding the 9-dragon thunder prison in his hand, he swung his sword. Blazing lightning spread out along with the sword light, and collided with Zhao Weihuang's spear. Clang! The sound of metal clashing rang out as true energy exploded at the same time. At the moment of contact, Zhao Weihuang's expression changed dramatically. He only felt a strong repulsive force surge along the body of the spear. It's real. Zhao Weihuang turned pale with fright. He could now confirm that Yi Guchen's true energy was not caused by some kind of illusory secret skill, but that he had really recovered his true energy cultivation. How is this possible? Zhao Weihuang roared, his eyes ferocious. Boom! The terrifying repulsive force directly pushed Zhao Weihuang back more than 100 feet. If not for the protection of the tiger-patterned black gold battle armor, the repulsive force would have been enough to make him suffer. Jiankui, you've been hiding it all along. Zhao Weihuang's eyes were so red that it was about to drip blood. He originally thought that he could easily kill Yi Guchen and take revenge. Who would have thought that the situation would turn out like this? A hidden dragon is thousands of feet deep in the abyss, and a flying dragon soars into the sky. My ability is something that you can't measure. Yi Guchen no longer said anything. Using the divine movement secret skill, his figure was as swift as lightning as he landed in front of Zhao Weihuang and swung his sword. Zhao Weihuang clenched his teeth. So what if your divine dwelling has recovered? Your cultivation level is still inferior to mine. I, Zhao Weihuang, will not lose. He completely unleashed his power and raised his spear horizontally. Berserk Demon Spear Art, Berserk Demon's Wrath. In the blink of an eye, true energy burst forth like a berserk demon coming out of seclusion. Destructive spear light swept out. Seeing this, Yi Guchen poured his vigorous true energy into the 9-dragon thunder prison. The power of 9-colored lightning burst forth, filling the sky with dazzling lightning. Divine Sword Lightning Controlling Art, Myriad Lightning Transformation. Yi Guchen's sword swept out, and a mighty 9-colored lightning tide spread out, colliding with Zhao Weihuang's destructive spear light. Rumble! Like a series of stars exploding, waves of air splashed out, turning the sky and earth upside down. In such a collision, Zhao Weihuang was once again pushed back. His chest violently shook, and blood spilled from his mouth. How is this possible, your strength? Zhao Weihuang's eyes were filled with horror. It was obvious that his cultivation was higher than Yi Guchen's. But now, not to mention suppressing Yi Guchen, he was even being suppressed by Yi Guchen and injured. My cultivation level is at the 4th layer of the divine dwelling. In terms of cultivation level, I am indeed lower than you, but things like battle strength cannot be measured by cultivation level. Yi Guchen said calmly. Zhao Weihuang stared at Yi Guchen, and then suddenly discovered something. His eyes widened, and he cried out involuntarily. Your divine dwelling, could it be? Chapter 1254. That's right. There's no harm in telling you. My divine abode has already transformed into a seamless divine abode. Yi Guchen said calmly. This wasn't a secret. Anyone who had fought with him would be able to sense it. Zhao Weihuang took a deep breath. His chest rose and fell, but he still couldn't hide the shock in his heart. That was a seamless divine abode. In an era where the highest quality world divine abode had become a legend, a seamless divine abode was already the most perfect divine abode. However, it was extremely difficult to transform into a seamless divine abode. Duguqiuma's transformation might seem easy, but that was because he had inherited the Azura sage ruler's Azura divine abode. Therefore, it was slightly easier for him to transform. For ordinary sky prides, it was extremely difficult to transform into a seamless divine abode. Not only is your divine abode unbroken, but you also have a seamless divine abode. How is this possible? Why is it you? Zhao Weihuang gritted his teeth, his eyes red. He admitted that he was envious, jealous, and unwilling to accept this. The person who had transformed into a seamless divine abode was his mortal enemy. Why? Are you desperate already? Yi Guchen said calmly. Zhao Weihuang took a deep breath. He turned to look at Duguqiuma from the corner of his eye. It was as if he had found a backer, and his heart was at ease. In Zhao Weihuang's opinion, Duguqiuma had also transformed into a seamless divine abode. In addition to his previous battle strength, it was more than enough to suppress Yi Guchen. Jiankui, if I was alone, it might be a little troublesome to deal with you. However, today, you will die without a doubt. With Duguqiuma as his backer, Zhao Weihuang no longer had any worries. He decided to use all his strength to deal with Yi Guchen. If it really didn't work, at least there was still Duguqiuma. Yi Guchen saw through Zhao Weihuang's thoughts, and a trace of pity appeared in his eyes. Berserk Demon Spear Art, Berserk Demon Sky Roar. Zhao Weihuang's innate chi converged at the tip of the tiger head clear gold spear. The spear light was accompanied by an explosion of innate chi. It turned around and pierced towards Yi Guchen. The air was torn apart by the tip of the spear, bursting with an ear-piercing screech. Divine Sword Lightning Control Art, Heavenly Thunder Attraction. Yi Guchen raised his sword. Wind and lightning gathered in the sky. Streaks of lightning moved like horned dragons. His strength had greatly increased, and the power of his sword moves was also far stronger than before. The lightning was guided onto the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison Sword. As Yi Guchen swung the sword, it clashed with the tiger head clear golden spear. Clang. It was as if the sound of the Heaven Realm's weaponsmithing room was transmitted into the lower realm. The ear-piercing sound of the collision seemed to have turned into an invisible sound wave. In this collision, Yi Guchen retreated a few steps, while Zhao Weihuang retreated several dozen feet. The web between his thumb and index finger had also split open, and fresh blood dripped down along the body of the spear. Zhao Weihuang's face was extremely ugly. In his eyes, Jiankui, who could easily suppress him in the past, was now suppressing him. No, I don't believe it. Zhao Weihuang also had his own pride. As the second on the War God Dynasty's War God list, he had the right to not fear anyone. Tiger Roar Spear Art, Cloud Movement in all directions. Zhao Weihuang changed to another spear art and displayed it. 8 spear shadows burst out at the same time, stabbing towards Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen displayed the ultimate move of the Divine Sword Lightning Control Art, Heavenly Execution. Bang! The spear shadows pierced the sky. The sword radiance swept across, true energy burst out, and the airwaves exploded. Zhao Weihuang was like a ferocious tiger that had broken free from its shackles. His spear moves were ferocious and ruthless. Yi Guchen, on the other hand, was taking a stroll in the park. He was extremely calm, and his sword radiance was extremely powerful as it swept across. If it was before, Yi Guchen's spiritual dwelling had not transformed, and his cultivation level had not increased. Even if he could deal with Zhao Weihuang, it would not be so easy. But now Yi Guqin was extremely calm. Zhao Weihuang's strength was no longer a great threat to him. Now Yi Guqin's opponents were no longer the heavens' prides of the dynasties. Instead it was the four-star lords, Gu Xiaoyang, Chu Xuanjin, Huang Qianqiu and the others. Tiger Roar Spear Art, Earth-Shaking 8 Desolates. Zhao Weihuang made another powerful move. His spear struck down like a ferocious tiger, causing the earth to shake and the airwaves to surge. Third Ultimate Holy Sword Star Sun Flowing Fire. Yi Guqin displayed the Star-Breaking Sword Art and the Star-Breaking Sword Art in succession, combining the two sword arts. A mighty and blazing torrent of sword chi burst out. Boom, boom, boom. The earth was overturned, and the weak water realm set off waves that were dozens of feet high. Amidst the smoke and dust, a figure tore through the smoke like a tiger that had been released from its shackles. His eyes were blood red, and he suddenly attacked Yi Guqin. Fierce Tiger Sky Shaking Dipper. Zhao Weihuang let out a roar and pushed his cultivation to the extreme. Endless true qi surged out of his body, as if condensing into a pitch-black fierce tiger phantom outside his body. This was his strongest move. He seemed to have turned into a fierce tiger that could tear the sky and the earth apart. He rushed towards Yi Guqin, raising his spear. It was as if a fierce tiger had struck out with its claws. The air was rapidly compressed, producing an ear-piercing screech. Not good. Yan Wushuang and Ji Ling's faces turned pale. Jian Kuei was their Swallow Cloud dynasty's benefactor, so they naturally did not want to see Yi Guqin fall in Zhao Weihuang's hands. Third Ultimate Holy Sword, Universe Annihilation. Yi Guqin activated the Star-Breaking Sword Art and the Star-Breaking Sword Art at the same time. The two sword arts combined, forming a sword that could destroy the world and destroy the universe. The sword swept across, destroying the world. Boom. It was as if two huge stars had collided, but also as if a nuclear bomb had exploded. A circular wave of air rippled out, causing the surroundings to shake. In this extreme collision, the fierce tiger aura on the surface of Zhao Weihuang's body was torn to pieces like a piece of paper by the sharp sword qi. He was also sent flying. However, Yi Guqin did not give up. He flashed forward, and the tip of his sword repeatedly pointed at Zhao Weihuang's chest. The tiger-striped black-gold battle armor on the surface of his body also began to crack. It should be known that this was a rare heavenly tribulation divine armor. However, at this moment, cracks began to appear. Yi Guqin's sword tip landed on the tiger-striped black-gold battle armor, with incomparable precision. Get lost. Zhao Weihuang roared angrily, blood dripping from his chin. He swept his spear, trying to push Yi Guqin back. Yi Guqin activated the power of the leakless divine palace again, and 10 times the true qi burst out. God slaying, immortal God weep. Yi Guqin once again displayed another emperor-level sword art. It was the combination of the God-slaying sword art and the immortal-slaying sword art, immortal God weep. The sword slashed down vertically, as if a bloody shadow of an immortal god had appeared. Crack! Under such a series of powerful attacks, Zhao Weihuang's tiger-striped black-gold battle armor finally could not bear the burden. With a crisp crack, it exploded into countless black metal fragments. Zhao Weihuang himself was also severely injured, and he vomited large mouthfuls of blood. Numerous metal fragments pierced into his body, causing injuries to his internal organs. Zhao Weihuang's body was like a falling meteor, and he crashed into the ground, creating a large crater. Chapter 1255. Amidst the smoke and dust, the sound of someone coughing up blood came from the crater. Zhao Weihuang's hair was disheveled, and he was in a sorry state. There were many bloody holes on his body, all caused by the metal shards piercing his body. His heavenly tribulation divine weapon armor had been shattered. It could be said that he had lost his greatest defensive means. At this moment, his eyes had changed from the previous viciousness and ruthlessness to deep fear and apprehension. Too powerful. Yi Guqin had grown to a level that even Zhao Weihuang was afraid of in such a short time. It was hard to imagine how powerful Yi Guqin would become if he found another opportunity in the Holy Imperial Universe. Damn it. This is impossible. How can I lose to him? Zhao Weihuang was unwilling to accept this. If it was possible, he still wanted to personally torture and kill Yi Guqin instead of relying on Duge Qiuma's strength. Zhao Weihuang had made up his mind to get rid of Yi Guqin this time. Otherwise, it would be even more difficult to kill him in the future. Zhao Weihuang, you are just digging your own grave by going against me. Now pay with your life for Yushan and Xiaojun. Yi Guqin's voice was as cold as ice. He hadn't forgotten about Yushan and Xiaojun. Even though they hadn't died in Zhao Weihuang's hands, they had indirectly died because of him. Jingkui, don't be so smug. I haven't lost yet. Zhao Weihuang activated the power of his spiritual dwellings again. His spiritual qi burst out violently and forced the metal shards out of his body. At the same time, he used his spiritual qi to seal the bleeding wounds. He was unwilling to give up. He wanted to deliver the final blow. Fourth style of annihilation, rolling thunder. Zhao Weihuang stomped on the ground, and the ground around him collapsed. His momentum was like rolling thunder, and his momentum was strong. A ray of cold light came first, and then the spear shot out like a dragon. The sharp tip of the spear shot out lightning and attacked Yi Guqin. Feudal struggle. Yi Guqin's eyes were indifferent. He used the third ultimate holy sword, reversal of stars and moon. It was as if there were stars and moons around him. Sword energy gushed out and tangled with Zhao Weihuang again. Clang! 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 The tip of the spear and the sword collided, causing sparks to fly everywhere. The speed of Zhao Weihuang's spear was extremely fast, as if it was a bolt of lightning. If it were anyone else, it would definitely be difficult to withstand such a ferocious spear force. But Yi Guqin was different. He had the divine movement secret skill, so he had never been afraid of anyone in terms of speed. Not to mention, Yi Guqin's sword speed was not any slower than Zhao Weihuang's. Puchi! Yi Guqin stabbed his sword into Zhao Weihuang's arm, causing blood to blossom. Without the tiger-striped black gold battle armor, Zhao Weihuang didn't have much defense. Zhao Weihuang's eyes were cold as he changed his spear moves again. Fourth style of annihilation, raging inferno. The spear style that was as fast as lightning changed to the fierce and tyrannical raging flame spear style. The spear shadows were like a large expanse of raging flames spreading, incomparably fierce. However, Yi Guqin was still calm. Baji reincarnation sword technique, extreme fire. In the void, a crimson Li trigram rune appeared. Yi Guqin broke the Li trigram rune with a sword. Raging flames spread on the sword body in an instant. The sword light was like fire, vast and mighty, covering the firmament. Since Zhao Weihuang's spear force was like fire, then Yi Guqin might as well fight fire with fire. The pitch-black heart demon flame also wrapped around the sword edge. When the two moves collided, the horizon seemed to have turned into a patch of burning clouds. Below, when Yan Wushuang and Jiling saw this, they marveled at the intensity of the battle. Duge Qiuma's expression was calm and composed, not surprised at all. He also knew that Yi Guqin was actually borrowing Zhao Weihuang to hone his leakless divine abode power. Zhao Weihuang was just a whetstone. If he wanted to solve it, Yi Guqin could very well kill him directly. Boom. After a series of collisions, Zhao Weihuang was still at a disadvantage. He was blasted back fiercely, his entire body charred black. Those were the traces left behind after being burned by the heart demon flame. Fourth style of annihilation, tempest. Zhao Weihuang roared in disbelief and attacked again. Yi Guqin still used the wind extremity of the eight extremities reincarnation sword technique. The sword force was like the wind, sweeping through heaven and earth, the void shook, and the firmament trembled. Cough! Zhao Weihuang was severely injured again, his entire body dripping with blood and wounds. Fourth style of annihilation, raging tide. This was the last move. Zhao Weihuang gave it his all. Hundreds and thousands of spear shadows seemed to have turned into a large sweeping tide, destroying heaven and earth and collapsing the clouds in the firmament. It's all useless. Yi Guqin shook his head. He didn't want to delay any longer, because it was almost time to hone in with his divine abode. It was time to send Zhao Weihuang on his way. Lightning Sword Principle, Heaven's Punishment Thunder Prison. Yi Guqin used the Lightning Sword Principle's sword territory, and activated the power of the Nine Dragon Thunder Prison sword at the same time. Accompanied by a roar, the the souls of 4 thunder dragons appeared. There were a total of 9 thunder dragon souls in the 9-dragon thunder prison. Only 9 thunder dragon souls could form the real 9-dragon thunder prison, which could destroy heaven and earth. But now, even if he only activated the souls of the 4 lightning dragons, it was enough to kill Zhao Weihuang. No. Damn it. Zhao Weihuang's eyes were filled with extreme fear. He had already used all his trump cards, but he still couldn't deal with Yi Guqin. Instead, he was in a life-or-death situation. He resisted with all his might, but in the end, he was sent flying by the Heaven's Punishment Thunder Prison. His body was charred black, and he crashed heavily on the ground, almost losing his life. Both Yan Wushuang and Ji Ling were shocked when they saw Zhao Weihuang's miserable appearance. He was a powerful sky pride who ranked second on the War God Dynasty's War God list, but now he was in such a sorry state. They turned to look at the figure in the sky with a sword in his hand, his black hair fluttering in the wind. Yan Wushuang's eyes were blurred. That figure gradually overlapped with the figure in her heart. At this moment, Zhao Weihuang's heart was filled with fear. At the same time, he was also incomparably furious. He suddenly turned his head and shouted at Dugu Qiuma, "Brother Dugu, please kill this bastard." Zhao Weihuang hated Yi Guqin to the core. Although he wanted to kill him personally, he had to admit that Yi Guqin was no longer in existence he could fight against. Therefore, his only hope was on Dugu Qiuma. However, to Zhao Weihuang's surprise, Dugu Qiuma still stood there with his hands behind his back, showing no signs of making a move. "Brother Dugu, hurry up and do something." Zhao Weihuang was a little stunned, and an ominous feeling arose in his heart. However, he didn't want to believe it. At that moment, Yi Guqin stepped down from the sky and approached Zhao Weihuang. Zhao Weihuang was even more terrified when he saw Yi Guqin approaching. He turned to Dugu Qiuma and shouted, "Brother Dugu, I've given you the nirvana fruit. Please do something. I'll definitely repay you generously in the future." However, Dugu Qiuma remained indifferent in the face of Zhao Weihuang's words. There was a wisp of indifference and a wisp of cold mockery in his dark golden demonic eyes. Zhao Weihuang's heart sank when he saw those eyes. His eyes were blood-red as he roared madly, "Dugu Qiuma, you're no weaker than this Jian Kuei. Why don't you dare to attack?" Zhao Weihuang misunderstood. He thought that Dugu Qiuma was unwilling to attack, because he was afraid of Yi Guqin. Let me tell you. Yi Guqin moved closer to Zhao Weihuang. The corners of his mouth curled into a faint smile. Zhao Weihuang stared at Yi Guqin, cursing Dugu Qiuma in his heart. Because Yi Guqin transmitted his next words to Zhao Weihuang through voice transmission. "Do you know now?" Yi Guqin smiled faintly. Zhao Weihuang was stunned, dumbfounded, and dazed. It was as if he was about to go crazy. He looked at the indifferent Dugu Qiuma, then looked at Yi Guqin in front of him. Incomparable shock and horror surged from his heart. He couldn't believe this fact. Chapter 1256. Zhao Weihuang felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. His entire body was chilled to the bone. His mind was completely blank. He had completely lost his ability to think. This was all because what Yi Guqin said to him through telepathy was too shocking. He didn't expect it at all, and he didn't want to believe it at all. No, impossible. This is absolutely impossible. I don't believe it. Are you lying to me? Zhao Weihuang trembled all over. He felt as if he was in the depths of winter. Dugu Qiuemo was Yi Guqin's clone? This was like seeing a ghost. Ha! It's up to you whether to believe it or not. Why would I lie to you? Yi Guqin shook his head slightly. Zhao Weihuang's teeth were chattering. His eyes were so red that it seemed like they were about to drip blood. He turned to look at Dugu Qiuemo. He also saw a cold and mocking look in Dugu Qiuemo's eyes. Really? When he saw Dugu Qiuemo's eyes, Zhao Weihuang's heart completely sank to the bottom. No matter how much he didn't want to believe it, he had to admit that it was very likely the truth. Yi Guqin didn't lie to him. This is too terrifying. Zhao Weihuang was in a daze. Dugu Qiuemo was Yi Guqin's clone. If this news were to spread, the entire Holy Emperor realm would be shaken. Everyone's thoughts would be turned upside down. Dugu Qiuemo's strength was beyond doubt. He was someone who could even suppress the geniuses on the Dragon Phoenix list. And such an existence was actually Yi Guqin's clone? Not to mention that Yi Guqin's strength was no longer at the level when his spiritual abode was broken. In this way, if Yi Guqin and Duguqiu Mo joined forces, how terrifying would it be? Most likely, with the exception of a few people, the rest of them would be swept away. That was why Zhao Weihuang said Yi Guqin was too terrifying. To think that he still had this trump card up his sleeve. But then, Zhao Weihuang remembered that he had personally delivered the nirvana fruit to Dugu, which had allowed Duguqiu to transform and become even more powerful. When he thought up to here, Zhao Weihuang was infuriated to the extreme, and he couldn't help but spit out a large mouthful of blood. His eyes almost split apart, and his lungs were about to explode from anger. By the way, I have to thank you. Yi Guqin smiled. Hearing this, Zhao Weihuang spat out a mouthful of blood. His already severely injured body was like a candle flickering in the wind. Oh, there's one more thing I forgot to tell you. It's about the Saint Lotus. Yi Guqin transmitted again. He could directly kill Zhao Weihuang, but he didn't want to do so. Zhao Weihuang will pay the price for his actions of encircling and annihilating the Sword Dynasty. Yi Guqin wanted Zhao Weihuang to die with hatred. What? After hearing Yi Guqin's voice transmission, Zhao Weihuang was completely stunned. What left him in awe was that the person who had stimulated the 50 leaves of the Holy Lotus was actually Yi Guqin. Spurt. Zhao Weihuang's blood gushed out, bursting out of his blood vessels. It was as if he had become a bloody man. The successive fatal blows finally caused Zhao Weihuang's severely injured body to collapse. All the blood vessels in his body burst. I hate. Zhao Weihuang looked up to the sky and let out a long, mournful howl. Then his body fell heavily to the ground in a pool of blood. The second on the God of War list, Zhao Weihuang, had died with hatred. Looking at Zhao Weihuang's extremely twisted expression after his death, Yi Guqin's eyes were cold. This was the outcome of going against him. As for Duguqiu, he looked at Zhao Weihuang's corpse and shook his head slightly. How tragic. Getting rid of Zhao Weihuang could be considered as resolving a small problem. However, Yi Guqin didn't relax because of this, because he still had many more powerful enemies to deal with. For example, the 4 Star Lords who had forced him into the Weakwater realm. These 4 people were also targets that Yi Guqin must kill. And now he also had the ability to really make a move. At this time, Yan Wushuang's beautiful eyes were fixed on Yi Guqin without blinking. Let's leave here first, Yi Guqin said. He thought that there might still be people outside the Sacred Emperor world spying on whether he was still alive, so this was not the place to talk. Yi Guqin flashed away and left directly. Yan Wushuang and Ji Ling also followed. As for Duguqiu, he didn't directly follow. His relationship with Yi Guqin now was not suitable to be exposed, because there was still a great enemy, and he needed to hide a hand. Duguqiu left in another direction. There were no other Heaven's Pridelings around the Weakwater realm, so the matter here didn't spread out. But outside the Sacred Emperor world, the scene of the Weakwater realm had been imprinted in the sky, because there were indeed people paying attention to Yi Guqin, to confirm whether he was really dead or not. But at this moment, when everyone saw the scene outside the Weakwater realm, there was a dead silence between heaven and earth. This is possible? Many people of the dynasty forces felt their throats were a little dry. When they saw Yi Guqin come out of the Weakwater realm, everyone thought their eyes were playing tricks on them. They really didn't expect that Yi Guqin was so lucky that he didn't die after being swallowed by the Kuan beast. Not only that, he even seemed to have recovered his divine dwelling, and his strength skyrocketed. Haha. Heaven has eyes. On the side of the Sword Dynasty, all the martial artists were boiling and cheering. Confuzi was in tears, looking up to the sky and laughing, incomparably relieved. Wu Hongyan was also relieved, and her charming face revealed a trace of excitement. Their Sword Dynasty's Jiankui not only did not die, but became stronger. He could even easily kill a Heaven's Prideling like Zhao Weihuang. The previous scene fell into everyone's eyes and they saw it. Although Zhao Weihuang and Yi Guqin had fought for a long time, Yi Guqin was not injured from beginning to end. and Zhao Weihuang was the one who was suppressed. This was enough to prove the difference in strength between the two. How could this be? The people of the War God dynasty all turned pale. The death of Zhao Weihuang, second on the War God list, was an unbearable pain for them. Some people were even terrified. If Yi Guqin encountered Zhao Shenkong, Zhao Xiaodi, and the others, what would the situation be? Could Zhao Shenkong defeat Jian Kuei of the Sword Dynasty? At this moment, even the people of the War God dynasty were a little uncertain. As for the seventh-star Lord of the Starry Sword Pavilion and the others, although they were surprised, they didn't show any expression. A mere Heaven's Prideling of a dynasty couldn't pose any threat to the Heaven's Pridelings of the Overlord forces. In short, Yi Guqin's reappearance caused quite a stir outside the Sacred Emperor world. Especially after seeing Yi Guqin's divine dwellings recover. Some people of the dynasties had a feeling that the Sacred Emperor world was about to face a great storm. After all, there were many people who had offended the Sword Dynasty and looked down on Jian Kuei. Outside the Sacred Emperor world, there was an uproar. Within the Sacred Emperor world, the news of Yi Guqin's reappearance had yet to spread. At this moment, on a plain, Yi Guqin stood calmly in the same place. Yan Wushuang and Jiling followed him, their breaths hurried, their chests heaving up and down. Especially Yan Wushuang, who had already given up, was nervous, which was rare for her, because she was afraid that everything was just her own guess. Is it you? Yan Wushuang's voice trembled, and her eyes reddened. Chapter 1257. Yan Wushuang's heart was nervous like never before. She was afraid that everything was just an illusion. Although it looked beautiful, it would shatter into pieces the moment she touched it. Logic told her that Yi Guqin had taken the 9 deaths, no regrets pill. It was impossible for him to still be alive. The person in front of her was just a stranger from the Sword Dynasty, Jian Kuei. But as a woman, Yan Wushuang's intuition made her fantasize about the face under the mask. Shuang. Jiling's eyes turned red when she saw Yan Wushuang's sorrowful expression. Her heart ached. She was the only one who knew how exhausted Yan Wushuang had been over the past year. Looking at the sorrowful beauty in front of him, Yi Guqin's eyes also revealed a complicated expression. His relationship with Yan Wushuang was indeed a little complicated. From the initial conflict to the reconciliation and friendship, they had gone through a lot. At this point, Yi Guqin no longer had to hide anything. He raised his hand and slowly took off the ghost mask on his face. Then, with a pinch of his fingers, a thin layer of skin was peeled off from his face, revealing a handsome face. His facial features were distinct, his lines handsome, and his eyebrows sword-like. Compared to a year ago, Yi Guqin's face had matured a little, and he was even more handsome. Only that pair of bottomless black eyes were the same as before. They carried the faint vicissitudes of life that belonged to the sword demon, deep and bright. Looking at the face that couldn't be more familiar, Yan Wushuang and Jiling both froze on the spot, sobbing silently. Especially Yan Wushuang. Her tears blurred her eyes uncontrollably. Is it really you? Yan Wushuang stretched out her hand as if she wanted to touch him, but she didn't dare. She was too afraid that this was just a dream. Shuang, it's been a long time. Yi Guqin smiled faintly. Hearing this familiar voice, Yan Wushuang finally couldn't suppress the longing in her heart. She threw herself into Yi Guqin's arms. A pair of pure white arms tightly wrapped around Yi Guqin. A complicated look appeared in Yi Guqin's eyes. He found it difficult to place his hands. In the end, he just patted Yan Wushuang's shoulder. I'm sorry that I haven't gone to look for you. Too many things have happened in between. Yi Guqin's tone was apologetic. That's great. You're still alive. That's really great. Yan Wushuang's tears stained Yi Guqin's clothes. Right now, Yan Wushuang didn't ask for anything. The fact that Yi Guqin had appeared before her again was already her greatest happiness. Jiling's eyes were also red. She couldn't help but tear up. Senior apprentice sister Ji, long time no see. Yi Guqin smiled at Jiling. Junior brother Yi, you're really? Jiling didn't know what to say. After venting her emotions, Yan Wushuang stopped crying. Her delicate face was slightly red. It was hard to imagine that a girl with such a resolute personality like Yan Wushuang would also reveal such a shy side. Wushuang had a guess before, but I didn't think that it would really be you. Yan Wushuang looked at Yi Guchen. There was a trace of longing in the depths of her beautiful eyes. When Yi Guchen appeared in the Swallow Cloud dynasty as Jiankui, Yan Wushuang had a trace of intuition in the bottom of her heart. Only now did she know that her intuition was correct. Ji Ling and Yan Wushuang were also very tactful. They didn't ask how Yi Guchen survived. Yi Guchen also briefly told Yan Wushuang and Ji Ling about his experiences in the past year. When they heard about the various dangerous battles that Yi Guchen had experienced, they couldn't help sweating. This kind of experience, if it were anyone else, they might end up dying in the end. However, Yi Guchen managed to hold on. Junior brother Yi, you are indeed a person who can create miracles. Ji Ling's beautiful eyes sparkled. Her tone was full of admiration and admiration. That's all. In front of me, there is a higher mountain to climb, Yi Guchen said. Hearing this, Yan Wushuang and Ji Ling fell silent. Until now, they still couldn't forget Yi Guchen's indomitable figure when they were in the infinite wilderness plain. Even if his opponent was the legendary Haotian real dragon, he didn't have the slightest fear. Junior brother, is your target this time to deal with Haotian real dragon? Ji Ling's eyes revealed a trace of worry. In her eyes, Yi Guchen was indeed a person who could create miracles. But Di Haotian was also not an easy person to deal with. Di Haotian won't appear in the Holy Emperor world, but he will definitely appear in Burial Sky Island. At that time, no matter the price, I will kill him. Yi Guchen's eyes surged with coldness. It was rare for him to have such killing intent. However, Di Haotian had completely crossed his bottom line. Looking at Yi Guchen's expression, Yan Wushuang bit her lips and said, "Is it for Miss Su?" The Miss Su she mentioned was naturally Su Jianshi. Yi Guchen was taken aback for a moment, but then he nodded. He had to save Su Jianshi. Seeing this, Yan Wushuang nodded slightly and smiled. That is indeed the case. At that moment of life and death, Miss Su stepped forward bravely and sacrificed herself. You can't let her down, Wushuang. Seeing this, Ji Ling wanted to say something but hesitated. She felt bad. How could she not know Yan Wushuang's feelings for Yi Guchen? If Yan Wushuang had enough strength back then, she would have stepped forward without hesitation like Su Jianshi. But she didn't. After coming to the desolate plains, Yan Wushuang began to cultivate crazily. She wanted to become stronger, so that she wouldn't lose the right to stand beside the person she loved in the end. Seeing Yan Wushuang's forced smile, Yi Guchen sighed inwardly. He wasn't Duge Qiu Mo. He couldn't be as carefree as a woman. Moreover, Su Jianshi had sealed herself in the mortal ruler's sword for him, and was suppressed by Di Haotian. At this time, Yi Guchen couldn't have any other thoughts. That would be irresponsible to Su Jianshi. Therefore, the thousands of words he had to say to Yan Wushuang could only turn into a faint sigh. Yi Guchen changed the topic and said, I'll be heading to the inner circle. What about you guys? We've already benefited greatly from young Master Duge's help. By the way, young Master Duge's relationship with you is. Said Ji Ling. He's my clone, said Yi Guchen. What? Even though she had some guesses, Ji Ling still gasped when she heard the truth. Yi Guchen's original body and clone were already so strong. If they worked together, wouldn't they be able to sweep through the entire sacred emperor world? Junior brother Yi, I finally understand why you said you could kill Di Haotian. If young Master Duge works with you, it might be possible. Ji Ling smiled. She had seen Duge Qiumo's strength with her own eyes. If Yi Guchen's original body and clone worked together to deal with Di Haotian, they might be able to succeed. At that time, it would be a huge event that would shake the entire South Horizon region. Ji Ling suddenly looked forward to the scene of Yi Guchen taking revenge on Di Haotian. How shocking would such a scene be? You're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.